Doraemon's daily check-in system. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201. Class ended. Ding ling ling. Just when Nobi Daichi was staring at the test paper in front of him, dozing off and about to fall asleep, the bell for the end of class suddenly rang. Nobi Daichi heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this heavenly sound. If the class didn't end, he would really fall asleep. After the bell rang, Rangai patted the desk in front of him and said, "Put down the pens, you are still writing. The class is over. If anyone writes again, the test paper you are doing now will be recorded as 0. Upon hearing this, some people who had not finished writing and were going to write a few more strokes, or some people who found a few mistakes and were going to correct them, stopped writing. There are also some people, the moment Rangai's voice fell, they had already put down their pens. After all, they would not be able to do these questions if they continued to do them, and these people were the same as Nobi Daichi. If the bell didn't ring again, I'm afraid they would fall asleep. But they can doze off. I don't know whether I can fall asleep under the watchful eye of teacher Ichiro. That's another matter. But it's different from Nobi Daichi. Nobi Daichi had already finished writing, was bored, and dozed off. But they didn't know how to answer many questions, so they were just staring blankly. Therefore, the two are completely incomparable. To put it another way, the top student sleeping during the exam and the poor student sleeping during the exam. In the eyes of the teachers, they may be different. Seeing that all the students had stopped writing, Ichiro also walked down the podium. Then Ichiro collected the test papers from the students one by one. After collecting the test papers and walking to the podium, Ichiro straightened the test papers and then tucked the test papers under his left arm. After packing up his things, Ichiro said, "Let's end the get out of class." Hearing what Ichiro said, no one in the class dared to move. After Ichiro walked out of the classroom, the whole classroom suddenly became noisy. "How did you do? What can I do? It's just like that. How did you do? Haha, you don't know me yet. Are you asking this to hurt me?" Similar remarks filled the entire classroom. The class atmosphere at this time was similar to the students after the exams in Nobi Daichi's previous high school. Some were excited, some were happy, some were disappointed, some didn't care, all kinds of different emotions. Lulu didn't leave as quickly as before this time, but was stopped by Nobi Daichi. After watching Rangai walk out of the classroom, Nobi Daichi hurriedly turned around and asked Lulu behind him, "Lulu, how did you do?" Lulu didn't dislike Nobi Daichi's actions and questions. Then Lulu thought about it. It should be okay. Hearing this, Nobi Daichi secretly said in his heart, according to Lulu's level, saying this, it is likely that she is very good. Then Nobi Daichi subconsciously asked about the debut. "Have you finished all the questions? Isn't it easy?" Hearing this, Lulu paused and hesitated. "No, I only did 5 questions in total." The next moment, Nobi Daichi was petrified. How is this possible? Nobi Daichi's face was full of disbelief. In Nobi Daichi's opinion, this kind of question should be very simple for a robot. How could this be? "Daichi, what's wrong with you?" Lulu looked at Nobi Daichi with a calm face and suddenly became shocked and asked with some confusion, "Nothing, nothing." Nobi Daichi waved his hands repeatedly. What Nobi Daichi didn't know was that Lulu's brain was indeed comparable to a computer. However, this only means that her learning ability is very strong, comparable to a computer. Simply put, Lulu only has this learning speed, not that she has so much knowledge in her mind from the beginning. And Lulu has only been here for a few days. In such a short time, it is impossible to learn more knowledge. This leads to the current questions. Lulu can only write them out, based on her previous little memory. "Do you have anything else to say?" Lulu looked at Nobi Daichi, who was in a daze, while she packed her school bag and quickly packed it. Then she asked Nobi Daichi, "It's okay, it's okay." Nobi Daichi looked at Lulu, who was carrying her school bag and was about to leave the classroom, and said quickly, "Then I'll go." Lulu said as she carried her school bag and walked out the door. When Lulu walked out of the classroom, Nobita suddenly turned around and asked Nobi Daichi, "Daichi, how are you doing? I saw the teacher standing next to you during class, and I was so scared that I didn't dare to move." The more he talked, the lower his voice became, as if he was afraid that others would hear him. Nobita Daichi rolled his eyes. "It's okay, anyway, it's just like that." In order not to undermine Nobita's self-confidence, Nobita Daichi said ambiguously. Hearing what Nobita Daichi said, Nobita's nervous mood suddenly calmed down. If Daichi entered the math competition this time, and he didn't, his mother Nobita Maka would have to say something to him. Seeing Nobita's performance, Nobita Daichi thought he guessed right. He thought he was right to say so. Otherwise, if he said he had done all the answers and might have gotten them all right, that would be bad. Looking at Nobita's current situation, who knows what will happen. By the way, Daichi, you haven't answered me why the teacher stood there for so long. Nobita also knew what was going on in class. Although he didn't know how to do the test paper and was bored, he didn't dare to look up. But Nobita could sense that Seiichiro walked past him and walked to Nobita Daichi's side. Well, Nobita Daichi heard this and held his chin with his right hand in deep thought. Nobita looked at Nobita Daichi with a contemplative look and was full of curiosity. He knew that teachers would usually stay next to some students for a while during the exam. But during the exam just now, Seiichiro stayed next to Nobita Daichi for obviously too long. That's why Nobita had this question, but it was only one of the reasons. Maybe I'm too handsome. Nobita Daichi, who had been thinking for a long time, said solemnly. Hearing this, Nobita's mouth twitched. Daichi, I didn't expect you to say such a thing. Nobita was also shocked by Nobita Daichi's thick skin. Ha ha ha. Nobita Daichi ignored Nobita's rhetorical question and laughed it off. At this time, Nobita Daichi had already packed his school bag. Are you leaving? Nobita Daichi put the packed school bag on the table and said to Nobita. I'm leaving. At this time, Nobita realized that he hadn't packed his school bag yet. Then, under the gaze of Nobita Daichi, Nobita packed his school bag in just over 10 seconds. Chapter 202 Trouble. Seeing Nobita stuffing books into his school bag like stuffing clothes, Nobita Daichi was speechless. Is it really good to stuff it like this? After all, books are easily wrinkled if you put them like this. But Nobita didn't care about it at all. After Nobita packed his school bag, Nobita Daichi and Nobita walked out of the classroom together. When the two walked out of the school gate, Fat Tiger and Sunia were already waiting for them at the gate. Hey, Daichi, how did you do in this exam? Are you confident? Fat Tiger patted Nobita Daichi's shoulder and laughed. Nobita Daichi didn't want to be too ostentatious, so he said, well, I don't know either. Let the teacher know. Daichi, you are too modest. We all know each other. Sunia was different from Fat Tiger. He said to Nobita Daichi directly. Hearing Sunia's words, Nobita Daichi did not answer. In his opinion, ambiguous and silent fans are the best. Looking at Nobita Daichi's appearance, Sunia thought that Nobi Daichi really didn't do well in the exam, so he apologized to Nobi Daichi. It's okay, Daichi. It's okay if you don't do well in the exam. It's just an exam. Look at Nobita. He didn't do well in the exam, but he's still living a happy life. Nobita was standing aside and was stunned when he heard Sunia's words. How did Nobi Daichi's matter suddenly involve him? Zao. Nobita was about to say something to Sunia, but Fat Tiger suddenly interrupted Nobita, who was about to say something. Since Daichi and Nobita have nothing to do here, let's go. Fat Tiger patted Sunia's shoulder and said. Sunia also felt that there was nothing to do, so he turned around and said to Nobi Daichi and Nobita. Daichi, Nobita, we are leaving first. See you in the afternoon. Sunia waved goodbye to Nobi Daichi and Nobita. Nobi Daichi and Nobita also waved goodbye to Fat Tiger and Sunia one after another. Then under the gaze of Nobi Daichi and Nobita, Fat Tiger put his arm around Sunia's shoulder and walked forward, and soon the two disappeared at the corner of the street. Then Nobi Daichi and Nobita also walked home. After arriving home, both of them put down their school bags first. There was no homework for noon. Therefore, Nobi Daichi seemed quite free for a while. Lying on the tatami, Nobi Daichi stretched out his left hand in front of his eyes and shook it. Then Nobi Daichi found the dark ring on the little finger of his left hand. Seeing this dark ring, Nobi Daichi also remembered his experience last night. Should I go and take another look? Nobi Daichi thought to himself. Although it seems that there is no problem with the world behind the aperture at present. But Nobi Daichi couldn't resist his curiosity. The city that appeared in the dream actually appeared in front of Nobi Daichi. How could Nobi Daichi suppress his little thoughts in his heart? But after thinking about it, Nobi Daichi temporarily gave up his idea. After all, it is noon now. The time at noon is not too much, but not too little. But if he had any accident in that world and stayed there for too long, it would not be good for some people in this world. So Nobi Daichi decided to go to that world again this afternoon or evening. Then he would resolve the doubt in his heart, and Nobi Daichi stretched out his left hand in front of him and looked at the dark ring. And it is not a good thing to wear this ring on your hand all the time. At school, Nobi Daichi accidentally showed his strength. Then he found that some female students in the lower grades, the same grade, or the upper grades always glanced at him intentionally or unintentionally. Needless to say, Nobi Daichi also knew that they saw the dark ring on his left little finger. There were also some male students. After seeing it, most of these people laughed. This made Nobita, who followed Nobi Daichi, confused. Although Nobi Daichi wanted to hide the dark ring, but he couldn't always focus on it, right? How could he live? However, thinking of the way several senior male students stared at him when he walked out of the teaching building after school in the morning, Nobi Daichi knew that he was in trouble and someone was lucky. The ring on his left little finger was indeed dark black, but after he passed through the aperture several times. At first, Nobi Daichi didn't know why there was a big lump on the dark ring, and the big lump also revealed its true form. It turned out to be a dazzling gem. The color was dark blue, like the sea. Under the sunlight, it was very beautiful, which made Nobi Daichi more likely to be exposed. However, when he knew this, Nobi Daichi was already on his way to school. But even so, Nobi Daichi didn't think too much. After all, in his opinion, it was nothing. There are people wearing rings in school. Nobi Daichi has seen quite a few. But why did he seem to become a sheep targeted by a hungry wolf as soon as he put on the ring? Or does this ring have other functions? He just hasn't discovered it yet. It's not that he didn't think about putting his left hand back into his sleeve, but you have to know that it's summer now and people are wearing short sleeves. As for putting other things on the little finger of his left hand, not only will it have no effect, it will only attract more attention. Nobi Daichi really couldn't figure it out, so he didn't think about it. Anyway, the dark ring has been fixed on his hand, and no one can take it away. Nobi Daichi and Nobita didn't have much free time before they were called downstairs by Nobita Mako to eat. After dinner, Nobi Daichi and Nobita returned to the second floor and slept for a while. Then the two of them went to school with their school bags on their backs. The first class in the afternoon was a physical education class. It was a class that Nobi Daichi felt he could relax in, and it was also a class that Fat Tiger and Sunia felt they could relax in. For this class, this physical education class, maybe Nobita was the only one who felt quite distressed. This class was a physical education class. Therefore, the person standing in front of them was not Ichinrangayalang. Instead, it was a female teacher from Nobi Daichi's school. Of course, this is not a very special thing. After all, this female teacher teaches several other classes while teaching Nobi Daichi's class. It's class time now, the female teacher said as she looked at Nobi Daichi, Nobita and others who were standing in a neat line. Although the teacher of Nobi Daichi's class is a female teacher, she is not as gentle as ordinary teachers. Instead, she has some masculinity. Although it seems a bit inappropriate to describe a woman like this. But this is the fact. She said to Nobi Daichi, Nobita and others, it's after class time now. The female teacher continued. Before the formal class, we need to do some activities first to stretch your muscles and bones, to prevent muscle strain later. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203-12. This is very good for you, so don't be lazy, otherwise you will have to bear the consequences. The female teacher said to Nobi Daichi, Nobita and others with a smile. Seeing the smile on the female teacher's face, Nobita, Fat Tiger, Sunia and others wanted to breathe a sigh of relief. After all, looking at the female teacher's appearance, it seems that she is not particularly strict, but seeing the white ruler in the female teacher's hand, no one knows when and where it came from. Nobita, Fat Tiger, Sunia and others couldn't help but tremble in their hearts. Yes, teacher. Everyone, including Nobi Daichi and Nobita, shouted in unison. Yeah. Looking at this situation, the female teacher nodded with satisfaction. Sure enough, good students are produced under the stick, and this principle also applies to physical education classes. Although she doesn't have a stick, the ruler is almost the same. The female teacher came back to her senses and then said to Nobi Daichi, Nobita and others, each of you should leave some space between you, otherwise it will be difficult to move. Under the gaze of the female teacher, Nobi Daichi, Nobita, Fat Tiger, Sunia and others separated from each other. Everyone stretched out their arms and detected the distance between each other. After a few dozen seconds, Nobi Daichi, Nobita and others stood apart. Follow me, the female teacher said to Nobi Daichi, Nobita and others. Then the female teacher began to do the first action in front of Nobi Daichi, Nobita and others. Looking at the action made by the female teacher, Nobi Daichi suddenly thought of a word he had heard of and experienced in his previous life. Broadcasting gymnastics. Of course. The action made by the female teacher standing in front of them was different from the actions of the broadcasting gymnastics in Nobi Daichi's memory of his previous life. And the name was different. It was not called broadcasting gymnastics, but these were not important. Looking at the actions made by the female teacher, Nobi Daichi also followed and did it in a proper manner. This first action was not that difficult. After watching the female teacher's actions once, Nobi Daichi learned it. It may even be better than what the female teacher did. You should know that the person who created this radio gymnastics was not the teacher in front of Nobi Daichi and others. It was some so-called experts. According to the structure of the human body, combined with some scientific common sense, it was created to be a beneficial exercise method for people. It is possible that even the founder may not be able to perfectly perform the set of movements he created. But this is different for Nobi Daichi. He not only has a greatly improved learning ability, but also has a strong ability to control his body. Although Nobi Daichi does not know how strong he is now. After all, he has not tried it. But there is no doubt. His strength has long surpassed the limit of human beings, which is dozens or hundreds of times that of ordinary people, or even top special forces kings. Although Nobi Daichi's strength is only in the early stage of the mortal realm, it is no problem for him to blow up a car with one punch. As for the middle, late, peak, and perfect stages of the mortal realm, when Nobi Daichi reaches perfection, I'm afraid that he will have no problem with resisting the Earth's nuclear bomb. As for the higher transcendent realm, that is unimaginable. But these are all unknown to Nobi Daichi. After all, he has not tried his strength yet. I don't want to know, and there is no need to know. Therefore, relying on his strong learning ability and powerful control over his body, Nobi Daichi easily performed the first move taught by the female teacher, and his moves were quite standard. The female teacher looked at the people who were learning her moves and doing the moves crookedly. Suddenly, she fixed her eyes on Nobi Daichi, and a hint of appreciation flashed across her eyes. After a minute, the female teacher said to everyone, "Okay, this is the first move. Now let's start learning the second move." Then the female teacher demonstrated the second move in front of Nobi Daichi and others. Nobi Daichi and others followed suit. The female teacher taught a total of 6 moves, but did not teach them all at once. Because if Nobi Daichi and others were taught all at once, they might not be able to learn them. Of course, this does not include Nobi Daichi and Lululu, but the female teacher does not know the special features of Nobi Daichi and Lululu. But even if she knew, it would be impossible to really teach all 12 moves at once. Although Nobi Daichi didn't know why there were 12 movements in total, because it was really too much. The female teacher had already told them some simple information about this set of movements when she taught them the first movement. The radio gymnastics that Nobi Daichi and others did was promoted throughout Japan, and it was not only used in elementary schools. Even after entering junior high school, the radio gymnastics during class breaks were also this. So Nobi Daichi thought that there were 12 movements in this radio gymnastics, but there must be a reason for this. In this way, it would probably be done once and for all. And I heard from the female teacher that she only taught them 8 movements in total, and the remaining 4 would be taught to them after they entered junior high school. After finishing all 6 movements, the female teacher led everyone to do these 6 movements one by one, and after doing them several times, the female teacher said to Nobi Daichi and others, "Okay, now the warm-up is over. Next, we will start the formal physical education class, and the next is running exercises." Hearing the female teacher's words, many students in the class made painful and unhappy sounds, and some even held their heads with their hands and looked painful. Seeing some students behave like this, Nobi Daichi was a little speechless. This was because he knew that they were all pretending. If he was an uninformed person, he might really think it was real. Looking at the performance of the crowd, the female teacher laughed twice. "Okay, stand up for me, stop playing tricks." The female teacher looked at some students who squatted down and pretended to be uncomfortable and said, but those students who squatted on the ground and felt uncomfortable didn't care about what the female teacher said. After all, this female teacher was the first time they met. In their opinion, such a female teacher is still easy to bully. After all, they have tried this many times before. Then they saw the female teacher waving the ruler in her hand. Holding the ruler in her right hand, she hit her left hand with a pa-pa-pa sound. The sound of the female teacher hitting her left hand with the ruler was very loud. It can be seen that the female teacher used a lot of strength, but everyone did not see the slightest frown on the female teacher's face. It is conceivable that the female teacher can easily bear this pain. But those students of Nobi Daichi may not be the same. Looking at the female teacher's actions, listening to the horrible pa-pa-pa sound, those who were squatting on the ground crying uncomfortably stood up. Very good, this is what a student should be like. The female teacher looked at all the squatting students who had stood up and said with a smile, Chapter 204 Consciousness. A few seconds ago, she looked serious, but the next second, she suddenly laughed. Nobi Daichi couldn't help but sigh. Women's faces are really changeable, or in other words, they can easily turn against each other. Although Nobi Daichi had not had much contact with women in his previous life, he knew about them through some rumors. Although he always felt that those rumors might be a little biased, he thought that there would not be too much deviation. But even if the difference was too big, it didn't matter to him. Gather around this classmate as the center point. The female teacher walked in front of Nobita and said to everyone. Then, after the female teacher's voice fell, all the students gathered towards Nobita. For a while, Nobita also enjoyed the illusion of the moon surrounded by stars. Soon all the students stood together one after another. Then the female teacher took Nobi Daichi, Nobita and others to the track of the playground. Next, you will run 2 laps around this playground. The female teacher stood in front of Nobita and others, and said calmly, the running circle where Nobi Daichi, Nobita and others were running, was about 400 meters per lap, and 2 laps was 800 meters. This was not a small amount for a group of children who were just in the 6th grade. However, most of the students, including Nobi Daichi, Fat Tiger and Sunya, were used to it. Only Nobita had a bitter expression on his face. Because Nobita was in the first row of the class team. If he couldn't run, the people behind him would also be left behind, or something unexpected would happen. However, the female teacher didn't know about this. After all, she had just taken over this class. Then at the female teacher's command, everyone in the 6th grade class 3, including Nobi Daichi, ran around the playground. When they just ran 100 or 200 meters, everyone, including Nobita, ran effortless. But when they ran to 3/4 of the first lap, some people gradually felt that their hands and feet were not obedient. After running the first lap, Some people were already panting heavily, and the most serious one was Nobita. However, despite this, Nobita still insisted on running in the first row without falling behind. Maybe Nobita also knew the importance of his position to the people behind him, so he dared not relax at all. But sometimes you can't just not relax. Your consciousness is indeed very strong, but that is only your consciousness. Even if your consciousness reaches the speed of light, it can calculate billions of times in 1 second. But if your body can't keep up, what's the use? Therefore, Nobita couldn't keep up before the second lap was halfway through. So Nobita ran out of the first row without the consent of the female teacher, and ran to the back. Nobi Daichi looked at Nobita on his left and ran out, and felt helpless. Nobita and Nobita are about the same height. There are no physical changes, because Nobita's cultivation has entered the early stage of the mortal realm. For example, taller, more handsome. In fact, it can be said that the height of all the students in the 3rd class of the 6th grade where Nobita is actually about the same. Of course, there are definitely some who are outstanding, and there are also some who force Nobita to be shorter. Therefore, Nobi Daichi and Nobita were placed in the first row not because they were so short. Looking at Nobita who ran out of the first row, a girl behind Nobita also spontaneously sped up a little bit. Then this girl ran side by side with Nobita Daichi. Nobita Daichi had no impression of this girl who ran side by side with Nobita Daichi. It seemed that she was from another class. Looking at this scene, Nobita Daichi couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. After all, he and Nobita are brothers from the same father and mother. Nobita is too bad, which has a certain impact on him. It's not that he didn't remind Nobita to exercise every day, but Nobita either didn't agree or agreed verbally. It was too much. He gave up immediately after exercising for 1 or 2 days. Looking at Nobita like this, Nobita Daichi was also helpless. He really couldn't understand how he could have such a brother. Why was he born a little bit later than Nobita? He is the older brother and Nobita is the younger brother. Isn't this good? Nobita Daichi really finds it hard to imagine. How did Nobita in this world become the god Nobita mentioned in the many novels he had read in his previous life? As for the god Nobita in the novels that Nobita had read and remembered, if we really want to evaluate god Nobita, Nobita himself is really hard to say. But no matter how we estimate, god Nobita has reached the top of the world of Doraemon. You have to know that according to the novels he had read in his previous life, god Nobita is simply omnipotent. In short, idealism. As long as you think about it in your mind, you can create it. Idealists are invincible. Thinking of this, Nobita suddenly thought of a theater version. Creation. Creating a world, a universe. What an exciting thing it is. But it's too early to say that now. Seeing Nobita like this, unless there is a miracle. Otherwise, even if Nobita gives all his current abilities to Nobita, I'm afraid Nobita will not become the god Nobita recorded in countless novels. Even if Nobita ran from the first row to the last row. But because of his physical fitness, it was still difficult for him to keep up with the speed of the whole class. Therefore, as the whole class ran, the distance between Nobita and the class was getting farther and farther. After the 6th grade class 3 completed the task assigned by the female teacher and ran 3 laps, the distance between Nobita and the whole class was already dozens of meters. Just after running the second lap, all the people in the 6th grade class 3 stood neatly in front of the female teacher. Of course, except for Nobita. The female teacher did not run with the 6th grade class 3 where Nobita and the others were. Instead, she stood where Nobita and the others started, holding a ruler in her hand and patting them from time to time. Looking at the entire 6th grade class 3 running in front of her, the female teacher was very happy and wanted to praise them. As a teacher, she certainly knew the importance of praise for a person. But praise is also a science, and it cannot be praised casually. But with a glance, the female teacher suddenly found a figure running not far away. Then the figure ran in front of him and stood in the first row. Seeing this, the female teacher's mood suddenly became bad. In her class, there are still people who are lazy? What's going on? The female teacher asked Nobita with a serious face. Nobita didn't know what to say. You can't just say that he can't run, right? Although this is the fact, everyone knows it, but it's so embarrassing to say it out loud. But the female teacher doesn't care what Nobita will say. Anyway, those who don't do what she asks will be punished. You come out, the female teacher said to Nobita. Chapter 205 Inexplicable. After hearing what the female teacher said, Nobita also walked out carefully. At this time, Nobita's face was full of sweat, and he hadn't had time to wipe it off. Other students, please rest here for a while. Does your class have a sports committee member? After calling Nobita out, the female teacher turned to Nobi Daichi and others. No one in the entire 6th grade 3rd class spoke for a long time. Your class monitor, come out. Answer my question. After the female teacher saw that no one answered her question, she planned to call the class monitor of the 6th grade 3rd class to answer her question. What's going on? After the female teacher saw that no one answered her question, her face changed slightly, and she became a little angry. Seeing this, Nobi Daichi stood in place and said to the female teacher, "Our class hasn't elected a class monitor yet, teacher. Is that so?" After hearing Nobi Daichi's explanation, the female teacher's face looked a little better. Then the female teacher didn't give Nobi Daichi a chance to refute. "Then you come and answer my question." Hearing this, Nobi Daichi was a little surprised, but there was no other way, so he had to do it. Besides, it was just a reply. What could it matter? Does your class have a sports committee member? No. Nobi Daichi replied. Then you can be the sports committee member. Why? Do you have any objections? The female teacher looked at Nobi Daichi's changing face and said with a somewhat unhappy expression, "Teacher, I have no objection." Hearing the dangerous words of the female teacher, although Nobi Daichi was not happy in his heart, he still said seriously without hesitation. Seeing this, the female teacher's face relaxed. She didn't want to deal with the troublemaker on the first day of class, which would cause a rift between her and the class, which would be bad for her future work. Remember, you are now the sports committee member of this class. Wait a minute. After you have rested, in about a few minutes, you will lead them to do the radio gymnastics I gave you. Understand? I understand, teacher. Nobi Daichi replied. The voice is too low, I can't hear it. The female teacher seemed to be a little dissatisfied with the volume of Nobi Daichi's normal speech. Got it, teacher. After hearing the female teacher's reminder, Nobi Daichi shouted at the female teacher. Well, this is how sports committee member should act. Then the female teacher looked up and shifted her gaze from Nobi Daichi to everyone in the 6th grade class 3. You also heard what I said just now. Don't make trouble. When I'm not here, everything is subject to the sports committee member. The female teacher said this and then remembered that she didn't know Nobi Daichi's name. So she turned around and asked Nobi Daichi, "What's your name?" Nobi Daichi. Then the female teacher turned around and continued to talk to everyone in the 6th grade class 3. When I'm not here, everything is subject to the words of the sports committee member Nobi Daichi. Then the female teacher took Nobita, who was looking very bitter, to the track. You should take a rest first, but remember not to squat or sit. Squatting or sitting right after running is not good for your health. Nobi Daichi instructed the other people in the 6th grade, class 3 according to some common sense about sports that he knew. For what Nobi said in general, after thinking about it, some people felt that it made sense. So they didn't squat or sit down because they were very tired. But some people didn't listen to what Nobi Daichi said. All the people in the 3rd class of the 6th grade haven't reacted to the sudden incident just now. In the physical education class, the physical education teacher suddenly took a student away, which was fine. In their eyes, the female teacher took Nobita to the side of the track in the playground. Then the female teacher stood behind Nobita and stayed there for a while, not knowing what to do. What's even more amazing is that Nobi Daichi became the sports committee member inexplicably. In this class, there are several people who were also sports committee members in the previous class. They originally wanted to be sports committee members in the 6th grade, but they didn't expect that they were snatched away by Nobi Daichi. How can they not be angry, upset, and annoyed? Therefore, for what Nobi Daichi said, these people, or some people who simply don't like Nobi Daichi, don't care about what Nobi Daichi said. Seeing that some people still didn't listen to his kind advice, Nobi Daichi, who sat down or squatted, didn't care at all. He just said a few more words, based on his duty as a sports committee member, and helped as much as possible. As for whether others listened or not, it was none of his business. After resting for a few minutes, Nobi Daichi felt that it was enough. So he said to everyone in the third class of the 6th grade, "Follow the requirements that the teacher said at the beginning of the class. Everyone should keep a little distance from each other. Next is the time for radio gymnastics." Although some people were very dissatisfied with Nobi Daichi becoming the sports committee member. Why could he become the sports committee member like this? In their opinion, people who can be sports committee members must be tall and strong, right? But Nobi Daichi is not like that at all. It's just that in some things, they also know the importance and must listen to Nobi Daichi. Otherwise, if Nobi Daichi reports to the teacher, they will be punished. After all, they used to do this often. There are more than 40 people in the third class of the 6th grade. Although Nobita was the only one who left, there were still more than 40 people. All of these people looked at Nobita, but Nobita did not have any fear or other negative emotions in his heart. After all, in Nobita's opinion, this scene was too small. He had even experienced and faced the scene of the Iron Man core of the mechanical utopia attacking the Earth. Just 40 or so little brats like this. Well, they can't be called little brats. Nobita's eyes suddenly caught sight of Lulu. With more than 40 people looking at him, Nobita certainly wouldn't be timid. Then Nobita performed a move taught by the physical education teacher in front of more than 40 people. After seeing Nobita's moves, some students felt that, although they felt similar to what the teacher taught, they always felt that there was an indescribable beauty. Then Nobita led all the students to do radio gymnastics, and at the same time, Nobita also looked at Nobita and the female teacher in the distance with his peripheral vision. Then, after Nobita and the female teacher rested for a while, the female teacher followed Nobita and started running. During this process, Nobita seemed to have failed to meet the female teacher's wishes several times. The female teacher spanked him several times with a ruler. It was horrible. The pain in the buttocks was only one aspect, but more importantly, it was too embarrassing to be treated like this in front of the whole class. Although they were the only class on the playground now. Chapter 206. Diligent Duty. Many people in the 6th grade, class 3 were secretly watching Nobita and the female teacher. But there were a few thorns who were still openly watching what Nobita and the female teacher were doing. Nobi Daichi didn't point it out, pretending that he didn't see it, and led everyone to do radio gymnastics seriously. In this way, Nobi Daichi and everyone in the class did the radio gymnastics. Then Nobi Daichi asked them to take a break. When the female teacher was not there, as a sports committee member, he certainly had the right and obligation to do it. That is to adapt to the situation. And he couldn't let them do the radio gymnastics all the time, right? That would be exhausting. After a few minutes of rest, Nobi Daichi led all the students in the 6th grade, class 3 to continue doing the radio gymnastics. When Nobi Daichi finished, the female teacher had already brought Nobita over. The female teacher seemed to be very satisfied with her teaching. But Nobita was different. He felt as if he had experienced the 18 levels of hell. Now he felt as if his bones were about to fall apart, and it took a lot of effort to take a step. But in order to avoid being punished and embarrassed, he still insisted on following the female teacher. After the female teacher took Nobita to Nobi Daichi, the female teacher said to Nobi Daichi, "You can go back to the team." "Yes, teacher." Then Nobi Daichi walked back to the team. "Nobita, you should go back too." After the female teacher said this to Nobi Daichi, she turned to Nobita and said, just now, when she was leading Nobita to run exercises and urging him to run exercises, the female teacher had already asked Nobita's name. Seeing Nobita walking towards her side, Nobi Daichi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. That's good, we are all remembered by the physical education teacher. When Nobita walked back to the team, the female teacher looked at the students whose foreheads were almost sweating. She was quite satisfied in her heart. It seems that the physical education committee member named Daichi who she appointed is still relatively diligent. Just when she wanted to say something and wanted to take Nobi Daichi and the others to do some other activities, the bell for the end of get out of class suddenly rang from the teaching building and spread to this side. After hearing the bell for the end of get out of class, the female teacher took back what she wanted to say just now. Seeing that more than 40 students in the third class of the 6th grade were looking at her, the female teacher said, "You performed well this time, except for a few students." When she said this, the female teacher's eyes paused on Nobita. But the female teacher immediately retracted her eyes and continued. "But overall, your class performed quite well. I hope you can continue to work hard like this in the next physical education class, especially with the cooperation of the physical education committee member. Got it, Daichi? Got it, teacher?" Hearing the female teacher calling his name again, Nobi Daichi couldn't help but feel a little itchy. But he didn't dare to refute the female teacher's words, so he shouted loudly in response to the female teacher. Hearing Nobi Daichi's reply, the female teacher seemed very satisfied. Then the female teacher didn't say anything else. Instead, she picked up the whistle hanging around her neck and blew it, and then said, "Let's end the get out of class." After the female teacher's voice fell, most of the more than 40 students in class 3 of grade 6 cheered. The get out of class is finally over. Yes, I'll be exhausted if the get out of class doesn't end. After the female teacher's voice fell, the 6th grade students gathered in groups of 3 or 2 and walked towards the classroom. Nobi Daichi also walked side by side with Nobita and planned to go back to the classroom. "Nobita, are you okay?" Daichi Nobi asked Nobita, who was walking abnormally. After hearing what Daichi Nobi said, Nobita's face suddenly turned red and he pretended to be tough. "It's nothing for me." "Then why did the teacher give you?" Daichi Nobi was interrupted by Nobita before he finished speaking. "The teacher took me to run together. It's for my own good. It's for exercise. I can totally bear it." After saying that, Nobita didn't care what Nobi Daichi would say next. He walked quickly towards the teaching building. Seeing Nobita like this, Nobi Daichi was a little helpless. But there was no good way. He could only walk quickly forward and chase after Nobita. Ding ling ling, soon it was the last class of the afternoon, which was a moral education class. But the moral education teacher only taught half of the class, then packed up the books on the desk and walked out. Then, under the gaze of the whole class, including Nobi Daichi, Ichiro walked in from the door with a book tucked under his waist. When Ichiro walked to the podium in the classroom, his face was full of smiles, and he seemed to be in a very happy mood. This made all the uneasy students in class 3 of grade 6 feel relieved. It seems that the teachers will not say any bad news. The next half of the class will be handed over to me. Ichiro pressed both sides of the podium with his hands and said to all the students below, "Maybe some students already know what I want to say." Hearing this, some students below, especially those who are good at studying, or some confident students, all looked at me, Chengrangailang, with expectation. Yes, you guessed it right. I have already graded the math papers for this morning, and I will talk about this in the next period of time. After you finish this test, you will find that there are things you have not learned. Some are 6th grade knowledge questions, and the last question even includes junior high school knowledge points. When Chengrangailang said this, some students below showed resentful looks in their eyes. Chengrangailang directly ignored these resentful looks. "Why are these questions asked? If there are no things beyond the syllabus, I believe that many students' scores may be full marks, or even similar, and then there will be no choice. And you should be able to guess the math competition. If it only tests the things I taught you, how can it be called a competition? Wouldn't it be enough to arrange a math test for the whole grade? Why bother with so much trouble?" At this point, some of the students below had a look of realization in their eyes. And you should know that the questions in this school level math competition may be much more difficult than the questions I set. I just added some junior high school knowledge points to the last math question. The reason I did this to make the questions simpler is to give you some confidence. At this point, Chengrangailang glanced at the seat where Nobi Daichi was sitting. Although he was very satisfied with Nobi Daichi's performance this time. But for this school level math competition, Chengrangailang did not have as much hope as in the morning. Because in the afternoon, his superiors gave him some more specific information. Let him roughly know the difficulty of mathematics in this school level math competition. Chapter 207 Announcement. In his opinion, facing such a question, Nobi Daichi might not do well in the exam this time. As for other classes, It's hard to say, because Chenrangai, don't know much about other classes. He doesn't understand why the school suddenly did this. But he didn't think about it any further. After hearing what Chenrangai said, many students below were shocked. Even students with good academic performance did not expect that the math test paper given by Chenrangai was so difficult in their eyes. And the school level math competition in Chenrangai's eyes was much more difficult than the one he gave. How difficult is that? Do they really have hope? Thinking of this, some students' eyes were dim. However, some students who studied well or always believed in themselves became more courageous and eager to fight after hearing what Chenrangai said. Chenrangai naturally saw the performance of his students below, but he didn't say much to comfort them. After all, it was useless. But he still had to do some superficial work, so he still comforted them. But you have to believe in yourself. Maybe a miracle will happen. When he said this, Chenrangai smiled and continued. Next, I will give you your test papers. Hearing this, the already quiet class suddenly became even quieter. If a needle fell on the ground at this time, well, I still couldn't hear anything. This time I gave you a math test paper. Although there are questions beyond your knowledge points, but I also gave you a lot of questions that include the knowledge you have learned. So the overall results are still about the same. When saying this, Chenrangai directly ignored Nobita. He really couldn't understand why the gap between Nobita and Nobi Daichi was so big when they were brothers. Okay, I won't say anything more next. Then Chenrangai picked up a test paper on the table. I will know my results soon. Even though Nobi Daichi is very confident in himself, he still can't help feeling a little uneasy. This may be the normal state of every student. No matter how confident you are, you will feel very uneasy before the results come out. Unless you don't care about your grades or you have absolute confidence in your own ability. This time our class has a perfect score. Hearing what Chenrangai said, everyone in the 6th grade, class 3 took a breath of cold air. Who is so terrifying? How can such a test paper get a perfect score? Some people may have some impression of this person. Yes, he is Nobi Daichi. The moment Chenrangai's voice fell, everyone in the 6th grade, class 3 looked at Nobi Daichi. Then all the students applauded. Although some students don't like Nobi Daichi, they still admire Nobi Daichi for this matter. Nobi Daichi enjoyed the feeling of being worshipped by thousands of eyes for a while. But if possible, he didn't want to be stared at by so many people, but his strength didn't allow it. Ahem. Chenrangai coughed twice to draw the students' attention to himself. Daichi, come up and get your test paper. After hearing what Ichiro said, Nobi Daichi left his seat and walked to the podium and took back his test paper under the gaze of all the students. Then he sat back in his seat. Nobita, who was sitting on his right, had mixed feelings at this time. It was impossible not to be envious. As for jealousy, Nobita really didn't have it. Maybe he had felt it before. But after seeing Nobi Daichi do well in exams many times, Nobita became less concerned about this matter. When a person reaches a point where you can only look up to him, most people will not have any other thoughts except envy. Of course. The most important thing is that he and Daichi are brothers. When Nobi Daichi sat down and put the test paper on the table, before he even took a look at it, Nobita instantly snatched his perfect test paper from Nobi Daichi's hand. Ichiro, who was standing on the podium, naturally saw this situation. But he didn't say much and automatically ignored this situation. Then he said again, Nobita, this time's results are. When he said this, Chenrangai suddenly stopped, his heart full of embarrassment. Because Chenrangai found that he had taken the wrong test paper. He originally wanted to read out all the test papers of good students first. Unexpectedly, he followed his previous thoughts and thought about Nobita and actually took out Nobita's test paper. However, although Chenrangai was very embarrassed, his face remained calm. Then Chenrangai pretended to be a little angry. It can't be said that he was pretending. He was very angry. Because Nobita's results this time set the lowest score in the whole class. He only answered one question, and that question was half right and half wrong. Chenrangai didn't know how to give a score. Nobita, come up and get the test paper. Chenrangai didn't want to say anything more. Hearing what Chengrang said, Nobita naturally didn't dare to delay and obediently left the table and went to the podium to get his own test paper. After seeing Nobita leave his seat, Nobi Daichi directly grabbed his own test paper from Nobita's desk. Looking at the big red check marks on his test paper, there was also a fried dough stick and 2 eggs. Nobi Daichi said that he was unhappy, but that was a lie. After Nobita took his test paper back, Neriichiro continued. There is another student, Dekisuji-san. Although he didn't get full marks, he also got a high score of 98 points, second only to Nobi Daichi, and ranked second in the class. After Neriichiro's voice fell, all the students in the 3rd class of the 6th grade applauded. After hearing the applause, Nobi Daichi quickly put down his test paper and applauded. The 3rd place is Shizuka, with a score of 96 in mathematics. Everyone applauded too, to encourage each other. The next time, Neriichiro read out the scores on all the students' test papers one by one. Then he asked the students whose names were read to go to the podium to get their own test papers. After all the students received their own test papers, Nobi Daichi was surprised to find that in this math test, the lowest score that Chengrang read out was more than 20 points. He glanced at Nobita's score. The score in that single digit was really unbearable for him. Nobita was looking at the big fried dough stick on his test paper, and he didn't know what he was thinking in his heart, just staring at the test paper blankly. Okay, Chengrang said, attracting the attention of all the students, asking them to stop looking down at their test papers. Chapter 208, following. So the 5 people from our class, who were selected for the school level math competition this time are Daichi, Dekisuji, Shizuka, Aso, and Kimura. Nobi Daichi was not surprised to hear Aizoruji say his name. He was also not surprised that Dekisuji and Shizuka were also on the list of 5 people. Now he already knew 2 of the 5 people, and he had no impression of the other 2. It seems that they were assigned from other classes. This school level math competition will be held this week. I hope that the 5 people who will represent this class in the school level math competition must work hard and strive to get a good score in this exam. This is not only good for the class, but also for your future. Do you know? Got it. The 5 people who were selected, including Nobi Daichi, responded to Aizoruji's words. Then the bell for the end of class rang. Aizoruji wanted to say something, but after hearing the bell for the end of class, it was not convenient to say anything. He had to let them go. But when he walked to the door, Chengrang suddenly stopped and turned around and said again, remember to do your homework when you go back. Okay, teacher. All the students responded in a respectful manner. Then Chengrang left the classroom with his books and teaching materials. This class is the last class in the afternoon. So after this class, everyone can go home. When Chengrang walked out of the classroom, some students also carried school bags with test papers in their hands or without test papers. They walked out of the classroom arm in arm or held hands. After class, Fat Tiger and Sunia walked in front of Nobi Daichi and Nobita with their school bags. Looking at Nobi Daichi, who was still packing his school bag, Fat Tiger and Sunia looked at Nobi Daichi with admiration. Daichi, tell me what method you used to get full marks. Sunia asked. That's right, Dazzy, you used to be at the same level as us. Why did you leave us and go solo now? Fat Tiger asked incomprehensibly. Of course. They were still very happy in their hearts. Hearing this, Nobi Daichi didn't stop packing his school bag. Well, study hard and make progress every day. A famous saying of study that Nobi Daichi remembered from his previous life came out of Nobi Daichi's mouth. Fat Tiger and Sunia were dumbfounded when they heard Nobi Daichi's words. What's the difference between saying it and not saying it? While Fat Tiger and Sunia were stunned, Nobi Daichi had already packed his school bag. Looking at Fat Tiger and Sunia, who were stunned by his strike, Nobi Daichi decided to be a good person to the end. So he said to Fat Tiger and Sunia, genius is 1% sweat plus 99% talent. Genius is 1% sweat plus 99% talent. Sunia murmured. Then suddenly there was a sudden realization, but it was gone in an instant and turned into a stunned expression. Dazzy, did you say it the other way around? This is a famous quote from Edison. Sunia and Fat Tiger also knew this, but Sunia remembered that it seemed to be 1% talent plus 99% sweat. Nobi Daichi laughed twice and did not answer. Seeing this, Sunia also knew that he was fooled by Nobi Daichi. He wanted to say something, but he probably couldn't win the argument. Who knows what will happen in the end, so he said nothing. At this time, Nobita also packed his school bag. Are you going with us? Nobi Daichi stood up and asked Fat Tiger and Sunia. Of course. Sunia answered Nobi Daichi as a matter of course, and he still had some questions to ask Nobi Daichi. Really? Nobi Daichi asked back. What's wrong? Hearing Nobi Daichi's question, Sunia and Fat Tiger looked at Nobi Daichi with some confusion. Even Nobita looked at Nobita without knowing why. If you want to follow Nobita and me, it's not impossible. What's the matter? Sunia hurriedly urged Nobita when he saw that Nobita had stopped talking. The secret cannot be revealed. You will know after following me for a while, Nobita said mysteriously. Seeing that Nobita was unwilling to talk, Fat Tiger, Sunia and Nobita had no better solution, so they had to listen to Nobita. Then Nobita walked out of the classroom, and Fat Tiger and Sunia followed closely behind. Because they were now in the corridor of the teaching building, and the corridor of the teaching building was also relatively narrow. Therefore, Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia did not walk side by side, but walked forward in a staggered manner. When they walked from this floor to the next floor, Sunia suddenly said to Nobita and others, "Hey, everyone, I found that someone seems to be following us from behind." Sunia said with some worry on his face. Hearing Sunia's timid voice, Fat Tiger said disdainfully, "If someone follows you, just follow them." Fat Tiger, what I'm afraid of is, what if they? Sunia explained as if Fat Tiger didn't understand. But he didn't finish. But the others also understood what Sunia wanted to say. What are you afraid of? I'm here. After hearing Fat Tiger's words, Sunia felt a little more at ease. Dazzy, does this matter have anything to do with you? Fat Tiger and Sunia thought of what Nobi Daichi had just said to them and couldn't help asking. What do you think? Nobi Daichi turned around and replied to them. Dazzy, did you already know about it? Nobita turned around and asked Nobi Daichi in surprise. This? No, I don't know. I just guessed, but I didn't expect that I guessed it right. Nobi Daichi, Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia walked downstairs while talking. Although Nobi Daichi walked forward without changing his expression, he would occasionally sense the situation of the people following them. The reason why it was only sensed from time to time instead of all the time was because in Nobi Daichi's opinion, it was completely unnecessary, and doing so would really give them too much face. Soon, Nobi Daichi and the other four walked out of the school gate and came to an alley with few people and almost no one. This was not the way Nobi Daichi, Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia were going home. It was Nobi Daichi who specifically asked to come here. Dazzy, Fat Tiger, Nobita, aren't you afraid? Sunia suddenly said. Hearing this, Fat Tiger hit Sunia's head with a hammer. What are you afraid of? With me here, who can bully us? If it really doesn't work, don't we still have Dazzy? Fat Tiger first bravely encouraged Sunia, but after thinking about it, he still said Dazzy. Sunia suddenly realized after hearing what Fat Tiger said. At this time, he didn't care about his head being hit by Fat Tiger. He remembered that Nobi Daichi could transform into that Emperor Armor. Chapter 209, Troublemaker. But Sunia seemed to have suddenly thought of something and said to Fat Tiger. But, in front of so many people, is it really okay to let others know that Dazzy can do that? Hearing this, Fat Tiger was also a little hesitant. Just when he wanted to ask Nobi Dazzy what to do, they had already reached the end of the alley. Unexpectedly, the alley they randomly found turned out to be a dead end. When they reached the end of the alley, 5 bad boys who were several heads taller than them and had colorful hair came behind them. Nobi Daichi, Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia, who heard the footsteps behind them, turned their heads and looked at them one after another. Although Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia knew that with Nobi Daichi there, they should be fine. But when it really came to this point, facing this situation, they couldn't help but feel a little scared. Even Fat Tiger was no longer as brave as before. After all, no matter how brave he was, He couldn't beat 5 people. And those 5 bad boys were much taller than him. When they saw the 5 bad boys in front of them, 3 words suddenly appeared in the minds of Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia, junior high school students. But what they couldn't figure out was that the 4 of them didn't have any hatred or grudges against these people. Then why did these 5 bad boys follow them? Did they want to rob them? When Sunia thought of this, he couldn't help but press his trouser pocket. In his trouser pocket was the pocket money for this month that his mother had just given him at noon today. It was tens of thousands. If it was robbed by these people, this month would be miserable, and he would have nowhere to complain. School bullying is actually very common, and they have often heard about it before. But they didn't expect it to happen to them today. Fat Tiger wanted to go over and fight with them, but he saw the 5 tall bad boys. Even the leader was holding a baseball bat in his hand. He suddenly felt powerless and cowardly, standing there. But facing this situation, what else can he do except being cowardly? Nobita at this time is even more needless. As the most afraid and timid of the 4 people, at this time, he was facing the wall and sticking to it. It seemed that he wanted to see if there was a hole on the wall that he could get out of. At this time, Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia had already walked from the back to the front of Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia. Among the 5 bad boys standing in front of Nobita, a leader was holding a baseball bat on his shoulder and a cigarette in his mouth. The bad boy with red hair, wearing a junior high school uniform, walked straight in front of them. To be precise, he walked 1 or 2 meters in front of Nobita. The boy in front, if you know what's good for you, give me the ring on your left little finger. In this way, I can still let you go, otherwise, the red-haired boy holding the baseball bat said with a cigarette in his mouth. Because he spoke loudly, everyone present could hear it. Therefore, Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia all focused their attention on the ring on Nobita's left little finger. Because they were very familiar with Nobita, they had never intentionally looked at what was on Nobita's left little finger before. At this time, the red-haired boy in front reminded them. The 3 of them also discovered the thing on Nobi Daichi's left little finger. It turned out to be a ring inlaid with a sea blue bright gem. When Sunia saw the ring on Nobi Daichi's left little finger, he was shocked. Their family is very rich, so he has seen a lot of such rings inlaid with gems. After all, his mother often buys such things, and his family has saved a lot. In addition, their family is relatively wealthy. Therefore, he has more knowledge than people of this age. But he can't tell what the gem inlaid on the ring worn on Nobi Daichi's left little finger is. But he is sure that it is absolutely real, and it is definitely an extraordinary thing, and its value is estimated to be no less than several million yen. But Nobita is different. He is just a little surprised that Nobi Daichi has a ring on his hand, and Fat Tiger just thinks that the ring on Nobi Daichi's left little finger is more beautiful, and he doesn't think anything. But the 5 boys standing in front of them are different. Behind the leading red-haired boy is a boy with yellow hair and a boy with green hair. At this time, the 2 teenagers were whispering, "Hey, we are really going to get rich this time. Of course, don't you see who our boss is? I heard that thing is worth millions." The green-haired teenager replied to the yellow-haired teenager, "But is it really okay for us to do this? After all, that thing looks really valuable." The yellow-haired teenager glanced at the ring on Nobi Daichi's hand and said, "Afraid? What are you afraid of? After we snatch the thing from that kid, then force that kid and tell him not to tell anyone, he will definitely surrender. Didn't we do this often before? What are you afraid of? But I always feel that thing is not simple. It's okay, even if there is something wrong, our boss can handle it." When he said this, the yellow-haired teenager and the green-haired teenager looked at the boss in front of them who dyed his hair red with respect. The red-haired teenager in front of them. It is said that he is a relative of the principal's family. This is why their boss took them to do this kind of thing and other bad things repeatedly in school. The school didn't even give him a reason to expel him. How about it? Have you thought about it? The yellow-haired boy with a cigarette in his mouth and the red-haired leader mentioned by the green-haired boy looked at Nobi Daichi, Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia with disdain, and at the same time, he hit his left hand with a baseball bat in his right hand. "I've thought about it," Nobi Daichi said as he walked towards the leader of the group. Daichi, Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia all looked at Nobi Daichi with some confusion. In their opinion, Nobi Daichi couldn't be so scared so quickly. Then the scene that appeared in the next moment made them think in their hearts. Daichi is still the same Daichi. Nobi Daichi walked in front of the red-haired boy under the gaze of everyone. Before the red-haired boy could react, he directly snatched the baseball bat from the red-haired boy and held it in his hand. The red-haired boy was obviously stunned, as if he didn't expect this to be the case. The red-haired boy with a cigarette in his mouth. Although he was surprised at how fast Nobi Daichi was, he didn't care too much. What's the use of your speed? Not only are there many of them, but they are also tall, and the exit is blocked by them. Therefore, when the red-haired teenager saw Nobi Daichi snatch the baseball bat from his hand, his face suddenly turned red. He was angry. Those who were blackmailed and threatened by him before all gave him what he wanted obediently. I didn't expect to meet such a thorn here today. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210 Boring. Thinking of this, the red-haired boy who was in the lead became ruthless. He decided that he would make Nobi Daichi lie at home for 100 days. As the saying goes, it takes 100 days to heal a broken bone. Thinking of this, a fierce look flashed in the eyes of the red-haired boy. Nobi Daichi also saw the fierce look in the eyes of the red-haired boy standing in front of him. Nobi Daichi was startled. Originally, he just wanted to teach them a lesson, but seeing the fierce look in the eyes of the red-haired boy, he immediately changed his mind. I don't bully others, and others don't want to bully me. This is Nobi Daichi's code of conduct. Simply put, if others don't offend me, I won't offend others. Boy, you're in trouble. The red-haired boy who was in front of Nobi Daichi said sternly. Nobi Daichi ignored the threat of the red-haired boy and threw away the baseball bat in his hand. He was afraid that he would accidentally kill someone with the baseball bat. Of course, with Nobi Daichi's current control, he can control his own power, but he has never fought with anyone. Therefore, he didn't know how much damage he could cause by exerting his strength. And who made Nobi Daichi soft-hearted? Then when the red-haired boy in front of Nobi Daichi, who had not yet reacted, was about to attack, Nobi Daichi had already jumped up and grabbed the red-haired boy's sleeve and then threw him to the ground. Bang! On the ground. The solid stone floor was cracked by Nobi Daichi's throw, and at the same time, a burst of dust was raised. The face of the red-haired boy was also filled with bright red, and it was obvious that he was seriously injured. However, Nobi Daichi controlled it very well. Not only did he not vomit blood, but he also made the red-haired boy very uncomfortable. And from the outside, it can't be seen that he was injured, but the internal situation is different. But after all, there is no danger to his life. At the moment, when he grabbed the red-haired boy just now, Nobi Daichi had a sense of enlightenment in his heart and knew the damage caused by the amount of force he used. Seeing that their boss was actually defeated by such a little kid, the four bad boys behind the red-haired boy also rushed towards Nobi Daichi one after another. In their opinion, it must be that the little brat Nobi Daichi cheated, otherwise how could their boss not even beat a little brat? At this time, Nobi Daichi also saw the four bad boys rushing towards him. The last bad boy actually had a brick in his hand. Nobi Daichi saw this scene. His heart was also cold. Is this really a group of junior high school students? How could they be so reckless? Watching Nobi Daichi and the five bad boys fighting, Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia also gathered together. Nobita looked at this 5 against 1 scene and couldn't help swallowing his saliva. You say, Daz he should be able to win, and it will be okay. Of course, you don't even look at who Daz he is. Hearing Nobita's words, Fat Tiger said with confidence, it should be okay. Sunia looked at Nobi Daichi who was going to 1 against 4 and said with some uncertainty in his heart. Nobi Daichi ignored the 3 bad boys who rushed over first. Before anyone could react, he rushed to the bad boy holding the brick. Then Nobi Daichi kicked the bad boy. The boy kicked by Nobi Daichi flew 4 or 5 meters away. At the moment, when the bad boy flew out, the brick in the boy's hand fell straight down. Then when the other 3 bad boys had not stopped running, Nobi Daichi quickly came back and kicked them one by one. Then all the bad boys lay on the ground for a long time and couldn't get up. Seeing this scene, Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia couldn't help but be stunned. Daichi, when did you become so powerful? Fat Tiger's eyes almost popped out when he saw this scene. He also wanted to be as powerful as Nobi Daichi. Yes, it's so cool, so fast that I can't even see it. Sunia also ran to Nobi Daichi and said repeatedly. After seeing Fat Tiger and Sunia running to Nobi Daichi's side, Nobita also ran over. Then the four of them gathered together. What should we do now, Daichi? Looking at the 5 bad boys knocked to the ground by Nobi Daichi, Sunia said. What do you think? Nobi Daichi asked Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia. This. Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia looked at each other and said in unison. Daichi, you should make the decision yourself. The 3 of them had never faced such a situation before, and they didn't know how to deal with it for a while. Nobi Daichi turned around and looked at the 5 bad boys who couldn't crawl up for a while after being beaten by him. Then he walked towards them. The 5 bad boys lying on the ground wailing. After seeing Nobi Daichi coming over, they couldn't help but feel scared in their hearts. They thought they were robbing a little sheep this time, but who knew it was a ferocious wolf? But what they didn't understand was, how could such a little kid be so powerful? Looking at the scared look of the 5 bad boys lying on the ground, Nobi Daichi couldn't help but lose interest. It seems that these bad boys are just guys with strong appearance but weak heart. Then Nobi Daichi turned to Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia and said, it's okay, let's go. Ah, Daichi, they want to steal your things. Are you just going to let them go? Nobita asked in confusion. Then what do you say we should do? Nobita rolled his eyes at Nobita. Let each of us kick them a few times? Nobita looked at the 5 bad boys lying on the ground and wailing with interest. When Nobita said that, Fat Tiger and Sunia's eyes also flashed. Seeing that the 3 seemed to be very interested in this, Nobi Daichi suddenly felt quite speechless. Don't joke, let's go. Nobita, Fat Tiger and Sunia had no choice but to follow Nobi Daichi and walked out of the alley. When Nobi Daichi and his group disappeared at the alley, the red-haired boy sat up from the ground with difficulty and leaned against the wall. Don't, cough cough, just stand there, call an ambulance for me. The red-haired boy coughed and shouted intermittently to his 4 incompetent men. Yes, boss. Then the yellow-haired boy lying on the ground also struggled to stand up, holding onto the wall, and walked out to the alley in trance. After walking a few steps, the yellow-haired boy turned to the red-haired boy and said, boss, hold on for a while, I'll go call for an ambulance. At that time, there were no so-called mobile phones, only landlines. The strength used by Nobi Daichi was not that great. After all, he didn't want to cause a death, nor did he want to make a big deal out of this matter. Therefore, he only punished them slightly. And in Nobi Daichi's opinion, it was really meaningless for a half-adult like him to bully a few real little brats. If they didn't come to cause trouble, he wouldn't bother to pay attention to them. Chapter 211 Together. After watching the yellow-haired boy limping out of the alley with the help of the wall, the red-haired boy felt his body and felt a burst of fear and a bitter smile in his heart. He wanted to cause trouble for others, but he didn't expect that he would be defeated. Now he has no intention of seeking revenge on Nobi Daichi and others in the future. Nobi Daichi's skills just now really scared him. Although Nobi Daichi doesn't look big, it is estimated that, even if he brings more than a dozen people, it will probably not be enough. Moreover, because he has done too many bad things in this school, his uncle, the principal of this school, has been a little impatient with him. Moreover, he just found that the child behind the child he wanted to rob seemed very familiar, but he didn't remember it just now. Now he remembered that the short guy seemed to be a rich second generation. The father of this rich second generation seemed to be the great benefactor of the school. He donated a lot of money to the school every year. If he wanted to rob these people's things. Yes, he never thought of robbing only Nobi Daichi's things from the beginning. That would be too unprofitable. If the father of the rich second generation knew about this, and he stopped donating money to the school every year. If his uncle knew that Ziofu's father didn't donate money because of him, he would probably be finished. After thinking about these things, he didn't dare to have a trace of revenge. Students of this age are indeed very rebellious, but although the red-haired boy is rebellious, he also knows the importance of the matter. This is also the reason why he has not caused any big trouble since he did evil. So his uncle, the principal, turned a blind eye to him. After a few minutes, the yellow-haired boy also came back. Looking at the red-haired boy who sat up and leaned against the wall, the yellow-haired boy said, "Boss, I have called an ambulance." The red-haired boy didn't say anything, but just nodded to the yellow-haired boy. Not long after, a white ambulance stopped at the entrance of the alley. Then several female doctors in white nurse uniforms got off the ambulance. Looking at the 5 boys lying at the entrance of the alley, the female nurses were also surprised. At the same time, I couldn't help but feel a little scared. It was obvious that this guy was making trouble, but he was just the loser. For a moment, several female nurses were at a loss, not knowing what to do. But since they were here, the 5 bad boys were taken to the ambulance one after another. The red-haired boy was carried up, and his injury was the most serious. The other 4 bad boys, except for the bad boy holding the brick, Nobi Daichi increased his strength. The other 3 were only slightly injured. Nobi Daichi's use of strength was very clever, which would only make them so painful that they couldn't stand up for a while. But they would definitely not break bones or anything. It is estimated that they will be fine after resting for 5 or 6 days or a week. As for the red-haired boy, the so-called boss, it will take more than half a month. This will also temporarily prevent them from harming others. Looking at their appearance, Nobi Daichi knew that these people must have done a lot of such things in their daily lives, so they just regarded it as temporarily eliminating harm for the people. At an intersection, Nobi Daichi and Nobita separated from Fat Tiger and Sunya. Soon, the 2 of them returned home. "Daichi, Nobita, you're back." When Nobita pushed open the door, Doraemon, who was sitting inside and eating dorayaki, greeted them happily after seeing them come in. "Doraemon, you look very happy. Have you encountered any fun things recently?" Nobita looked at Doraemon with a smile on his face and couldn't help asking. "Yes. No." Doraemon was eating dorayaki and felt a little scared. He almost said what he really thought. Nobita said, "Doraemon, why didn't you go out today?" "There are not many things to do recently, so I didn't go out." Seeing Nobita's smart change of subject, Doraemon quickly changed the subject and replied, "Then what do you do every day when you go out?" Hearing Nobita's question, Doraemon's face flushed and he lowered his head to eat dorayaki and answered Nobita. Looking at Doraemon's appearance, Nobita had some guesses. Doraemon is probably on a date with Xiaomi, but this is just a guess. But Nobi Daichi didn't care and put his school bag next to the desk. Then he took out his homework from his school bag and started to write. 10 minutes later, Nobi Daichi successfully finished today's homework. As for Nobita, the first thing he did when he got home was not to do his homework, but to relax and read comics. After finishing his homework, Nobi Daichi felt a little bored for a while. Then he suddenly saw the dark ring on his little finger. It doesn't seem to be a good thing to always call it that, so let's give it a name. But what should I call it? Looking at the deep blue gem inlaid on the ring, Nobi Daichi immediately had an idea. Let's call it Deep Blue. I don't know if that aperture can allow other people to travel through it. Thinking of this, Nobi Daichi looked at Nobita who was lying on the tatami reading comics and Doraemon who was eating dorayaki. Since there's nothing to do now, let's go out and have some fun. Then Nobi Daichi stood up from his chair and walked to the side of Nobita and Doraemon. "Nobita, Doraemon, do you want to go out and play?" "Where to go?" Nobita said. Doraemon persuaded. "Daichi, have you finished your homework? You'll be scolded if your mother finds out." "It's okay, I finished it," Nobi Daichi said with a satisfied look when he heard Doraemon talking about homework. Nobita. "Okay, but where are we going to play?" Doraemon asked. "If the distance is far, just use my anywhere door." "Doraemon, your anywhere door won't be needed this time," Nobi Daichi said. But what he didn't know was that he was slapped in the face. Huh. Hearing this, Doraemon was even more confused. Nobita and Doraemon were both fooled by Nobi Daichi, and their curiosity was ignited. Seeing this, Nobi Daichi no longer hesitated. He stretched out his left hand in the air, and with a thought, a ray of light shot out directly from the dark blue ring on the little finger of Nobi's left hand. When the light shot into the air, in front of the door, a dark blue halo the color of the sea, as high as a person, appeared in the air. Looking at this magical scene, Nobita and Doraemon were both very surprised. Nobita really didn't expect that the ring on the little finger of Daichi's left hand could have this function. As for Doraemon, he was also confused about this. He remembered that he didn't seem to give Nobi Daichi any props. The appearance of this scene also surprised Nobi Daichi. The halo as high as a person last night was obviously white. How come it suddenly turned dark blue now? Is it because it is daytime now? Nobi Daichi couldn't help but look at the dazzling sunlight outside the window. Chapter 212 Undersea Racing. However, these are not the main points. The main point now is whether Nobita and Doraemon can go to another world with him through this deep blue light circle. Dazzy, is this the world you said you wanted to go to? Yes. Through this deep blue light circle, we can go to another world. That world is an ocean. So Doraemon, can you take out some props that allow you to move in the water? Of course I have this thing. Doraemon thought for a while. Then Doraemon put his hand into the 4-dimensional pocket. Then Doraemon took out a gun from the 4-dimensional pocket. Adaptation gun. Adaptation gun, a living thing that can survive in any environment as long as it is illuminated by the light of this prop. After taking the prop out of the 4-dimensional pocket, Doraemon explained the function of the adaptation gun to Nobita and Nobita. Then Doraemon used the adaptation gun to shine on Nobita and himself. Although Nobi Daichi has a universal adaptable body that can adapt to various environments, he does not intend to say this. Because even if he does not say some things, Nobita, Doraemon and others will know them in the future. And if he really wants to say it, he will have to explain it with great effort. After putting the adaptive gun back into the 4-dimensional pocket, Doraemon looked at the dark blue light circle that appeared in front of the three of them and couldn't help asking, Daichi, what's going on? Seeing the curiosity in Doraemon and Nobita's eyes, Nobi Daichi knew that this matter seemed to have to be explained. Otherwise, it would not be good for Doraemon and Nobita to always be entangled in this matter. Therefore, Nobi Daichi explained. Doraemon, Nobita, do you remember? It was when we went out fishing that time, I accidentally picked it up in a place. Oh, Doraemon and Nobita both showed a look of realization. But why is it like this now? Doraemon pointed to the dark blue light circle. I'm not sure about this either. Nobi Daichi scratched his head. He really didn't understand this matter. Then can we set off now? Nobi Daichi asked, after turning his attention from this matter. Well, it's okay, let's set off now. Doraemon replied. Then, before Nobi Daichi and Doraemon could react, Nobita was the first to rush to the dark blue light circle. Then Nobita went into the dark blue light circle without hesitation and disappeared. Seeing Nobita really pass through the dark blue light circle and disappear, Doraemon really believed what Nobi Daichi said. Then Doraemon followed closely and went in. When Nobi Daichi passed through the dark blue light circle, he found himself in the deep blue ocean again. Doraemon and Nobita, who came earlier, were standing next to the dark blue, no, white light circle waiting for him. After seeing Doraemon and Nobita, Nobita also swam towards Doraemon and Nobita. Then he turned his head and looked at the light circle behind him. It's strange. Why did this light circle turn white again? Could it be because it's night here? Nobi Daichi couldn't help but think. Thinking so, Nobi Daichi observed the environment around him and found that it seemed to be darker than the last time he came. Daichi, are you okay? Seeing Nobi Daichi who swam over without saying a word, Doraemon and Nobita were a little anxious. I'm fine. Hearing the anxious voices of Nobita and Doraemon, Nobi Daichi came back to his senses and said. After seeing Nobi Daichi was fine, Nobita and Doraemon couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It's good that you're fine. It's good that you're fine. They were really afraid that something would happen to Daichi. So where should we go now? Doraemon asked. Nobita heard what Doraemon said and looked at Nobi Daichi. In Doraemon's opinion, Nobita Daichi asked him and Nobita to come to this world. It shouldn't be just for them to play around in this ocean. If that's the case, wouldn't it be better if he used the portal to take Nobi Daichi and Nobita to the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean? Nobi Daichi didn't answer Doraemon's question. He was looking at the deep blue light circle and thinking about something. Since I can summon this light circle, I can definitely put it away. If I go to other places and come back to this place every time, it always feels a little unsafe and inconvenient. Nobi Daichi couldn't help thinking. Then Nobi Daichi moved his mind, and the deep blue light circle turned into a stream of light and flew back to the ring. Is it really possible? Seeing this, Nobi Daichi couldn't help but smile. This is much more convenient and safe. Looking at this scene, Nobita and Doraemon were a little surprised, but they didn't care too much. Daichi, what should we do next? Doraemon asked Nobi Daichi his question again. Hearing Doraemon's words, Nobi Daichi smiled mysteriously. You will know if you follow me. Then Nobi Daichi swam to a place. After Nobita and Doraemon looked at each other, they followed Nobita Daichi and swam forward. After the three of them swam for a while, Nobita Daichi suddenly stopped. He felt that this was a bit slow. Doraemon, do you have any props that can help us speed up a little? Of course there are such things, Doraemon said without hesitation after hearing Nobita Daichi's words. Then Doraemon took out a racing car under the gaze of Nobita Daichi and Nobita. Yes, that's right. Doraemon took out a racing car from the 4-dimensional pocket. However, this racing car is different from ordinary racing cars. It is a racing car that can be driven on the seabed. Undersea racing car, a racing car that can be driven on the seabed surface. Of course, it can also be driven on land. Nobita Daichi remembered that Doraemon had taken this thing out in a certain theater version. After taking the underwater racing car out of the 4-dimensional pocket, Doraemon briefly explained the function of the underwater racing car to Nobita Daichi and Nobita. Then let's take this underwater racing car to the place that Daisy mentioned. Nobita and Doraemon naturally had no objection. However, since they were all floating in the water at this time, Doraemon took back the car that could be driven on the seabed surface. Then they dived downwards. When they landed on the surface of the seabed, Doraemon had already taken out half of the racing car that could be driven on the seabed surface. Doraemon seemed to have thought of something again and kept turning around and asked Nobi Daichi. When Nobita and Nobi Daichi saw that Doraemon was slow to take out the underwater racing car, they also looked at Doraemon. Chapter 213 Try. Why do we have to use this? Can't we just use the anywhere door? Anywhere door? Nobi Daichi was stunned when he heard what Doraemon said. If this world is still the world we were in before, it would be possible. But I feel that this world may be similar to the mirror world, so the anywhere door may not be used. Nobi Daichi speculated. Then have you tried it, does he? Hearing what Doraemon said, Nobi Daichi said embarrassedly. I don't think I have tried it. Nobita. Doraemon. Then let's try it. If the anywhere door can be used here, we don't have to go through so much trouble. Hearing what Nobi Daichi said, Nobi Daichi thought it made sense. Then Doraemon took the anywhere door out of the 4-dimensional pocket and placed it on the seabed where they were standing. Then Doraemon left in front of the anywhere door and asked Nobi Daichi to open the anywhere door. Because only Nobi Daichi knew where they were going. Walk to the front of the anywhere door. Nobi Daichi held the handle of the anywhere door, thinking about the cave he was going to. After opening the anywhere door, behind the anywhere door was pitch black, like a bottomless abyss. Seeing this scene, Doraemon and Nobita couldn't help but be a little surprised. Nobi Daichi also felt incredible about this. Could it be that the world behind the aperture was really still the Earth? Because the place behind the anywhere door was exactly where he had been once. With the strength of the early stage of the mortal realm, he could still see roughly in this dark environment. But he immediately denied his idea. After all, this place may not be the Earth. Maybe it is a planet with humans in the Doraemon world. Thinking of this, Nobi Daichi couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Although even if this is the Earth, it doesn't have any impact on him, but he still doesn't want the world behind the aperture to be the Earth. Because it would cause a lot of trouble. Daisy, is this where you want to go? Why can't you see anything? Doraemon saw Nobi Daichi open the anywhere door. It was pitch black behind the door, and I couldn't help but feel a little scared. Yeah, it looks too scary. Nobita couldn't help but say. It's okay, just follow me. Does any one of you have a flashlight? Looking at the dark cave, Nobita asked Doraemon and Nobita. Yes. Doraemon said as he took out a flashlight from his 4-dimensional pocket. Then Doraemon was about to take the lead to walk forward and explore the way for them, but Nobita suddenly closed the door again. What's wrong again, Daisuke? Looking at Nobita's operation, Doraemon and Nobita couldn't help but be speechless, and at the same time they were also confused. I want to see if I can directly reach the place I want to go through the anywhere door. Nobita explained it to Nobita and Doraemon simply. Yes, Nobita's idea is to see if he can use the anywhere door to directly reach the city he wants to go to, which he has seen several times. If it is possible, it would be very convenient. Ah, Daichi, isn't that the place you wanted to go just now? Nobita said. Nobi Daichi didn't reply to Nobita this time, because Nobita's question was really thinking about the place he wanted to go. Nobi Daichi opened the anywhere door again. After the anywhere door was opened this time, behind the door was not the scene Nobi Daichi wanted to see, but an empty place. In short, after Nobi Daichi passed through the anywhere door, he remained in the same place without any change. It seems that it failed. Nobi Daichi said to Doraemon and Nobita helplessly. Then let's go to the place before. After closing the anywhere door, Nobi Daichi opened the anywhere door again. Nobi Daichi opened the anywhere door for the third time, and behind the door was pitch black again. Doraemon took the lead this time to walk in with a flashlight. He wanted to illuminate Nobi Daichi and Nobita. After Doraemon entered the dark cave through the anywhere door, Nobi Daichi and Nobita followed closely and entered the dark cave through the portal. When Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon all entered the dark cave through the portal, Doraemon handed the flashlight to Nobi Daichi first, then walked to the portal and put it back into the 4-dimensional pocket. Daichi, why don't you lead us? Doraemon did not take the flashlight from Nobi Daichi's hand. Well, I'll lead the way. Nobi Daichi did not pretend to be hypocritical and hesitate. He walked directly in front of Nobita and Doraemon. Under the light of the flashlight, Nobita and Doraemon could clearly see that there was a huge wall covered with aquatic plants in front of them. Daichi, is this the place you want to take us to? It doesn't seem to be fun at all. Nobita turned to Nobi Daichi and said. Doraemon was also very confused. Haha, you will know soon. Then, in the surprised eyes of Nobita and Doraemon, Nobita Daichi stretched his arm towards the wall. Is there a switch on the wall? Nobita and Doraemon couldn't help but have such an idea in their minds. At this moment, all kinds of TV drama plots they had seen appeared in their minds. But what disappointed them was that after Nobita Daichi's hand touched the wall, no switch appeared around. Because there was no movement around them, no sound was heard. But it was a pity that it was too late, and they were stunned again. Nobita Daichi stretched his hand towards the wall, and his hand actually went through the wall directly. What is going on? Nobita couldn't help but exclaimed. Although Doraemon didn't say anything, but from his wide eyes, it can be seen that he was very surprised. Haha, this is why I brought you here. Seeing the surprised look of Nobita and Doraemon, Nobita Daichi couldn't help laughing. Then Nobita Daichi took a step forward, and his whole body disappeared into the wall in the shocked eyes of Nobita and the two. But, after Nobita Daichi passed through the wall and disappeared, Nobita couldn't help but ask Doraemon. Doraemon, Daichi shouldn't be in any trouble, right? Should he? Doraemon was a little unsure. At this time, both of them were in a dark space, and they were a little scared. After all, since Daichi asked us to come here, he must have been here before, and knew it was safe. If it was dangerous here, he wouldn't have asked us to come. Doraemon explained to Nobita and comforted himself. After hearing Doraemon's explanation, Nobita breathed a sigh of relief. After Nobita Daichi passed through the strange wall, he found that he had come to the cave he had been to once again, but there was no water in this cave. Chapter 214 Strange. But a few seconds after passing through the wall and coming to this waterless cave, Nobi Daichi immediately returned to the underwater world again. Seeing Nobi Daichi appear in front of them again, Nobita and Doraemon were slightly relieved. Daichi, what did you do just now? Nobita couldn't help asking. I went over there to see the situation. Nobita Daichi said this fact. That is, if someone in that city ran to the cave and suddenly found the three of them there, they would be in trouble. I don't know what the city outside the cave is like. Are there really people living in that city? Nobita Daichi is really a little uncertain about this. After all, He really knows nothing about the world behind the wall. But since he is here, Nobita Daichi will definitely go and take a look. Oh. Hearing Nobita Daichi's words, Nobita and Doraemon both said oh to show that they understood. I'll shine the light for you. You go in first. Okay. After hearing what Nobita said, he ran towards the wall in front without hesitation. Then there was a bang. Ouch. It hurts so much. Nobita fell to the ground and half sat up. Touching his aching head, he couldn't help but ask Nobita what was going on. Why can't you get through? Obviously, Daichi, you were able to get through just now. Nobita stood up from the ground. While complaining to Nobita, he touched the wall with both hands to test it. Touching the wall in front of him, Nobita only felt that it was all cold wall, and there was no other feeling. I don't know about this. Seeing that Nobita was in this situation, Nobita couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Doraemon, why don't you try it too? Nobita seemed to have suddenly thought of something and said to Doraemon. He wanted to see if this was an isolated case or something. Okay. After hearing what Nobita said, Doraemon did not hesitate and walked directly to Nobita's side and put his hands on it. Because of Nobita's previous lesson, Doraemon did not crash into the wall directly like Nobita. Then Doraemon also touched the wall, which was no different from a real wall. He could not pass through it either. What is going on? Nobita Daichi couldn't help but feel confused. Then he passed through the wall again and entered another cave. Seeing Nobita Daichi disappear in front of him again, Nobita and Doraemon were even more confused. They didn't know what was going on now. Could it be that Nobita Daichi came to amuse them? But it shouldn't be. Not to mention that they didn't know. Even Nobita Daichi himself didn't know. Nobita Daichi found that he had successfully passed through the wall again and came to another cave without water. But this time Nobita Daichi did not hesitate and turned around and passed through the wall and returned to Nobita and Doraemon. Daichi, what's going on? Nobita and Doraemon saw Nobita Daichi coming back and they hurried forward to ask. This? Nobi Daichi paused. I'm not too sure. Is it because of the deep blue? What deep blue? Nobita and Nobita Daichi heard what Nobita Daichi said about deep blue, and they both showed confused expressions in their eyes. Yes, it's this ring. I named it deep blue. Is that so? Nobita and Doraemon both showed a look of sudden realization. I see. Then what should we do next? Hearing the questions of Nobita and Doraemon, Nobita Daichi was silent for a moment. Are they going to go back like this? This is a scene that Nobita Daichi really doesn't want to see. Suddenly, Nobita Daichi thought of a way and said to Nobita and Doraemon, Nobita, hold my hand. Then Doraemon will hold Nobita's hand and see if we can get in this way. If not, let's talk about what happens next. Then let's do it. Nobita and Doraemon had no objection to this. Then Nobita held Nobita's right hand and Doraemon held Nobita's right hand. Then Nobita pulled Nobita and Doraemon towards the wall and passed through the wall smoothly. Nobita and Doraemon, who were pulled by Nobita, also passed through the wall miraculously. Nobita looked at Nobita who had passed through the wall and the wall in front of him and couldn't help feeling a little scared. He was afraid that he would hit the wall again. However, he still held Nobita's hand and followed behind Nobita. When he saw that his hand passed through the wall without any problem, Nobita felt relieved. Doraemon behind him was also relieved when he saw that Nobita could pass through the wall. It seems that this method is feasible. Such an idea came into the minds of Nobita and Doraemon at the same time. After Nobita passed through the wall, he was relieved to see Nobita and Doraemon being pulled over by him. If Nobita and Doraemon could not be brought over, he would have no other way. He could only let them go back and let him explore here by himself. Or he could think of a way to bring them here, but who knows when it would take to find a way to bring Nobita and Doraemon here? How is it? Are you all okay? Nobi Daichi asked Nobita and Doraemon. Although Nobita and Doraemon have passed through the wall, it is not certain what other situations may arise. Hearing Nobita Daichi's somewhat worried words, Nobita and Doraemon both lowered their heads to check themselves for a while and found that there seemed to be no problem. However, Nobita, who came here through the wall, was surprised to find the situation. That is, the cave entrance was not as dark as before. It seemed that the cave entrance was not far from here, and there were still streaks of light at the cave entrance. The most surprising thing was that Nobita found that there was no water here. Daichi, here. Nobita couldn't help asking Nobita Daichi. Nobita Daichi saw Nobita's words. In addition to seeing the expression on Nobita's face, he guessed some of what Nobita was going to say. Then Nobi Daichi nodded, confirming Nobita's words, and said at the same time, "Yes, there is no water in this place." "Daichi, you said you came here once. When was that? Aren't we usually together?" Nobita seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked. "This happened when I got up to go to the bathroom last night. The deep blue activated itself and shot out the light circle that allows us to travel through. Then I stepped into it in a daze, and then I came here. I explored this world casually, and then I found this place. So that's how it is." Although Nobita and Nobi Daichi thought Nobi Daichi's adventure was very dreamy, they didn't pay much attention to it. Chapter 215 Mocha. After all, they have experienced a lot of things. And in a sense, they themselves are dreams. So where are we going now? Nobita and Doraemon don't know the situation here. So Nobita and Doraemon can only let Nobita Daichi, who knows the situation here, make the decision. This cave is similar to the underwater cave that Nobita Daichi crossed through. It is probably tens of meters high and tens of meters long. However, the length of the cave entrance where Nobita Daichi and others are now is not as long as the cave entrance when they came. Therefore, after walking for a while, they have walked out of the cave. Looking at those sky-blocking trees, Nobita and Doraemon both feel as if they have come to a primeval forest. After Nobita Daichi led Nobita and Doraemon out of this forest, Nobita and Doraemon discovered that there is actually sunshine in this place. It is not surprising that there are trees. It is not necessarily impossible for them to grow on the seabed, but the sun on the seabed, the branches and leaves in the forest just now were too lush, and the clouds in the sky blocked them. Nobita and Doraemon were the ones who didn't notice the sunlight. At this time, Nobita and Doraemon had already walked out of the primitive forest, and the clouds in the sky just flew away from this place. Nobita pointed at the sun in the sky and was so surprised that he didn't know what to say. Doraemon also looked at Nobita Daichi curiously, wanting to know what was going on. Seeing this, Nobita Daichi had to shake his head and explain. "I don't know where this place is, so for that thing, I don't know much about it either. But I have a guess that wall is something that people can pass through, just like your anywhere door, Doraemon. It can't be that there is a sun in the underwater world." Listening to Nobita Daichi's explanation, Nobita and Doraemon still felt that it made sense. Therefore, Nobita and Doraemon didn't delve into this issue any further. Looking at Nobita and Doraemon, who suddenly realized, Nobita Daichi silently added a sentence in his heart. "Maybe it's an artificial Sunday." At this time, they had walked out of the cave and came to the edge of the primeval forest. Therefore, Nobita and Doraemon also saw a huge city hundreds of meters and thousands of meters below them. Around the city are various rural towns. Looking at this scene, they actually felt that the environment was similar to their hometown. After all, in the original world, in Tokyo, where they lived, there was also a small hill behind the school. And this place was very similar to the environment of their home. But they were sure that this was definitely not where their home was, because this place was very different from the town layout, except that it was similar to their home. The city below Nobita and the others was surrounded by mountains, and the mountains were endless. And the homes of Nobita and Doraemon in Tokyo were surrounded by plains. "What should we do now?" Nobita asked anxiously. He couldn't wait to go to the city below to play. "Doraemon, take out your invisible cloak first. Otherwise, if we run into the people of this world, it will be bad if they think we are invaders." Just as Nobi Daichi looked at the hillside road below and told Doraemon without turning his head, a person suddenly walked out from the hillside road not far away. Nobi Daichi had a strong vision because of his strength in the early stage of the mortal realm, and he saw this scene early. Then, before Nobita and Doraemon could react, Nobita Daichi grabbed Nobita and Doraemon, who had not yet taken out the invisible cloak, and put his hands into the four-dimensional pocket, and ran to the primeval forest behind him. Then he took Nobita and Doraemon, and hid behind a bush. Nobita and Doraemon were caught by Nobita Daichi without knowing why. Then, Nobita Daichi held their shoulders, and squatted down with Nobita Daichi. Looking at Nobita and Doraemon who wanted to speak, Nobi Daichi put his right index finger in front of his mouth to signal them not to speak. Although Nobita and Doraemon didn't know why Nobi Daichi brought them here and didn't let them talk, they still followed Nobi Daichi's instructions and didn't talk. Then they saw a white-haired old man who actually walked up from the hillside. No, to be precise, it wasn't walking, because this white-haired old man's feet were actually a few centimeters away from the ground. Although he was walking all the time, his lower body didn't move at all. If it was at night without knowing it, people would think it was a ghost. Seeing this scene, Nobita and Doraemon also understood why Nobi Daichi didn't let them talk. It turned out to be because of this situation. The scene in front of them made Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon dare not breathe. They all looked at the old man in front of them through the gap in the grass quietly. At this time, Doraemon didn't hesitate and quickly found 3 invisible cloaks from the 4-dimensional pocket. One was handed to Nobita and Nobi Daichi. Then Nobi Daichi and the other 2 put on invisible cloaks. To outsiders, they all disappeared on the spot. At this time, the white-haired old man was only a dozen meters away from the cave where Nobi Daichi and the other 2 came out. Although Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon had already put on the invisible cloak, the old man was also 100 meters away from them. But Nobi Daichi and the others still did not dare to move at all and squatted obediently. Strange, why do I feel like someone is peeking at me? Mocha was very confused. That's right, the person who went up the mountain was the old man on the luxury cruise ship, Mocha. Then Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon heard the white-haired old man seem to be saying something, but they didn't understand. It was neither Japanese, nor Chinese nor English. Nobi Daichi still knew a little about these 3 languages, but Nobi Daichi couldn't understand what the white-haired old man said at all. Although it might be the language of some other places on the earth, some other minority countries. But Nobi Daichi didn't dare to be sure about this. Seeing the white-haired old man Mocha seemed to be saying something, Doraemon then took out a translation konjac from his 4-dimensional pocket. After taking a few bites, Doraemon ate the translation konjac. After feeling someone staring at him, Mocha also walked towards the place where Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon were based on his intuition. If he hadn't brought any equipment this time, it wouldn't have been so troublesome. The reason why he went up the mountain this time was to see what happened just now. He seemed to be dazzled just now. Did he see someone coming up? You know, this whole piece of land is his private land, and strangers are not allowed to come in without permission. Chapter 216 Going down the mountain. Moreover, there are security personnel checking and other special monitoring equipment at the bottom of the mountain. How could someone sneak up here? However, for the sake of caution, he decided to come up and take a look. Soon Mocha walked to the bushes where Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon were. But what Mocha saw was an empty space. Hey, is it really my illusion? After muttering to himself, Mocha turned and left. After seeing Mocha turn and leave, Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon did not move. They did not stand up immediately, as if they had reached some kind of consensus, even though they could not see each other at this time. Then after waiting for a long time, Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon stood up from the ground. Then they quietly walked out from the bushes, and after seeing that there were no people at the bottom of the hillside, Doraemon took the lead in taking off the invisibility cloak from his body. Nobi Daichi and Nobita also took off their invisibility cloaks when they saw this. After taking off the invisibility cloak, Nobi Daichi and Nobita were confused. Doraemon, what are you doing? Why did you take off the invisibility cloak? Nobita asked. Well, I just want to tell you about the old man just now. Although I can talk with the invisibility cloak, it always feels weird, so I took off the invisibility cloak. Huh. Doraemon, can you understand what he said? Nobita was puzzled. Haha, Nobita, did you forget that I have the translator konjac? Oh. Nobita showed a look of realization. Then tell us what the old man said. Hearing Nobita's words, Nobi Daichi nodded in agreement. I did hear something from what the old man said. It's just that I took out the translation konjac a little late, and the old man was far away from us at the beginning, so I didn't hear anything particularly important. I only heard that the old man seemed to say something about a plan, and that God would not let down those who work hard. Oh, by the way, He also said something about monsters at the end, but the sound was not very clear, so I'm not sure. After listening to what Doraemon said, Nobi Daichi was shocked. Could it be that the things that appeared in his dream would really happen in reality? But it was just a dream after all. It's just that the various situations that have appeared at present have forced Nobi Daichi to believe that the dream may really become a reality. However, no matter what, Nobi Daichi will never allow such a situation to happen. Even if it happens, Nobi Daichi will try his best to stop it. It's not that he is a saint, but he has the ability, so he will do it naturally. Otherwise, his conscience will be uneasy. As the saying goes, the greater the responsibility, the greater the ability. Didn't someone say, if you are poor, you should take care of yourself, and if you are rich, you should help the world? If he didn't have the ability to resist the monster, he would definitely run away without saying anything. Nobi Daichi thought to himself. Then let's go down now. Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon put on an invisible cloak one after another. Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon who put on the invisible cloak couldn't see each other. So in order not to get lost, Nobi Daichi and the other two walked hand in hand. This also made their speed slower, but not too slow. 7 or 8 minutes later, Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon arrived at the foot of the mountain. After arriving at the foot of the mountain, Nobi Daichi and the others could see the situation at the foot of the mountain clearly. They saw a series of tall iron fences in a circle surrounding the entire foot of the mountain. Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon who walked down the hillside were in front of a large iron gate. Although the door in front of them was open, there were still a large number of soldiers guarding next to the door. They were real soldiers, each of them was armed with live ammunition. And although the door was open, but there was a detection device on both sides of the door, and the detection device was now scanning red rays back and forth. I'm afraid that ordinary people would trigger an alarm once they came into contact with the red rays. But Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon were obviously not ordinary people. The situation at the door. Nobi Daichi naturally saw it clearly, but he did not hesitate at all. He walked directly to the door. But Nobita and Doraemon were different. After seeing the guards at the door, Nobita and Doraemon hurriedly stopped their hurried steps. Nobi Daichi had no choice but to stop temporarily. Then Nobi Daichi felt that Nobita, who was pulling him to a remote place. After arriving at a dark and remote place, Doraemon took off his invisible cloak again. What should I do now? Doraemon asked. It seems that we can't go through the main entrance. Why don't we look for other doors? If that doesn't work, we can use the bamboo dragonfly to fly out, Nobita said. Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon all saw that there was nothing above the door. No. Nobita directly rejected Nobita's idea. Why? Nobita was just thinking of a clever plan for himself. He was naturally unhappy when Nobita Daichi rejected him, before he could even feel proud for 2 seconds. Then he said with a puzzled look. You also saw that there are many guards next to the door. From this point of view, other places. Let's not talk about whether there is a door to go out. Even if there is a door to go out, the defense situation is probably similar. Then it will be okay for us to fly out, right? Nobita was still a little unconvinced. Since we can think of this kind of thing, how can those people not think of it? Will they not make relevant preparations? Hearing Nobita Daichi's continuous questions, Nobita was speechless. Then what should we do? Doraemon said. In fact, we were able to get out wearing the invisible cloak just now. How is this possible? Although those people can't see us, there are detection devices at the door. Although Doraemon didn't know whether the red light emitted from both sides of the door was used to detect people, but I think it wouldn't be too different. The invisible cloak can block those detection devices. Nobi Daichi explained. Can it? I really don't know. Doraemon scratched his head. If it's true, how did you know it? Does he? Anyway, I know it. Nobi Daichi couldn't say it. I once sneaked into a military base and found that those detection devices had no effect on him wearing an invisible cloak, right? So he could only turn a blind eye. Doraemon looked at Nobi Daichi suspiciously, which made Nobi Daichi feel a little guilty. But Doraemon didn't say anything in the end. Then let's try it according to what Daichi said. Nobita saw that Doraemon and Nobi Daichi both agreed, so he didn't have any objections. and even if he had any opinions, it would probably be useless, and this place felt too dangerous. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217 Mutation. It would be good to leave earlier. However, Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon did not put on the invisible cloaks immediately. Although Doraemon believed what Nobi Daichi said, it was only to a certain extent. If they put on the invisible cloaks and went out without making more preparations, Doraemon would never agree. Therefore, Doraemon equipped Nobi Daichi, Nobita and himself with their cannons. Then Doraemon said to Nobita and Nobi Daichi, "Let's go." Then Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon put on the invisible cloaks one after another and disappeared on the spot. Because this time, each of them had an air cannon installed on one hand. Therefore, they walked slower while holding hands. Then Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon walked towards the door carefully. Soon Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon came to a place less than 20 meters away from the door. The door at this time was almost the same as before they left. There were still several fully armed soldiers standing on both sides of the door. There were also several fully armed soldiers standing outside the door. Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon were getting closer and closer to the door, and they didn't dare to breathe. Closer, closer. Looking at the door getting closer and closer, Doraemon's throat was about to jump out. It would soon be known whether they could walk out safely. But when Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon were less than 5 meters away from the door, the old man they had seen before appeared outside the door and was walking towards the door. The identity of the old man seemed to be very unusual. When the old man was still several meters away from the door, the soldiers at the door all saluted the old man with a military salute that Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon had never seen before. Seeing this, Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon all seemed to have reached some kind of consensus and stopped at the same time. Then Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon all walked slowly to the side of the door. The invisible cloak could not only hide the body, but also the sound. This is why Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon walked a few meters in front of some soldiers, and these soldiers still did not find anything unusual. When Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon left the main entrance and came to the side of the door, Mocha also walked to the door. Then the detector at the door seemed to have no effect on Mocha, and Mocha went directly through the door, and there was no movement. Nobi Daichi, who saw this scene, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It seems that the red ray at the door is really just for detection, not for attack. But even if it is offensive, as long as it avoids its detection and does not trigger some kind of mechanism, there should be no problem. What Nobi Daichi is afraid of is that, if the red ray is an offensive weapon, how powerful is its attack? The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. Nobi Daichi didn't care whether the red ray at the door was for detection or defense. Anyway, they must go out of the door. Mocha, like Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon, had seen before, with the soles of his feet a few centimeters from the ground. At this moment, Mocha was holding something with an antenna in his hand, which looked like an old-fashioned mobile phone. Seeing this scene, Nobi Daichi couldn't help but twitch his mouth. From the fact that the old man could walk a few centimeters above the ground, it can be seen that the level of technological development in this place should not be low. But the thing in the old man's hand looked backward. It was just that after the old man came in, he stood at the door without moving. At this time, Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon were less than 10 meters away from Mocha. Therefore, Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon held each other's hands and stood there without daring to move. Strange, why do I always feel that someone is watching me in secret? Is it because I have been too tired from work these days and caused an illusion? Mocha couldn't help but feel a little scared. After injecting some kind of drug, he could no longer see by the standards of ordinary people. His 5 senses were greatly enhanced after injecting that drug. This also allowed him to avoid several assassinations. It stands to reason that there should be no problem in this regard, but nothing is absolute in the world. Mocha is not particularly sure. Could it be that the person who's spying on me is among these soldiers? Mocha couldn't help but turn around and look at the soldiers behind him. But the soldiers guarding here were all looking forward at this time, not looking at him, and didn't have the courage to look at him. It should be someone else. But he looked around, and there was no one else around, except the soldiers who were on high alert. Why doesn't this old man leave? Nobita felt uncomfortable staying still, and couldn't help moving his feet. He already knew that these people not only couldn't see them, but also couldn't hear the sound of their walking. Mocha thought in his heart, and his right hand holding the detector kept rotating the detector. He was still worried after checking it with his naked eyes once before, so he found the detector and wanted to check it carefully. Just feeling that he was being spying, the detector in his hand did not move. Pop. Mocha was turning the detector, thinking in his heart, but the detector in his hand accidentally fell to the ground. Then Mocha bent down to pick up the detector that fell on the ground. After picking up the detector, Mocha was ready to get up and look somewhere else. But when he looked up, Mocha found a shoe 4 or 5 meters away. Seeing this scene, Mocha's pupils shrank suddenly. Then he quickly stood up and backed away. After retreating to the side of a soldier, Mocha pulled out the gun on the waist of the soldier next to him without hesitation. The next moment, Mocha fired a shot. Bang! The moment Mocha quickly stood up and backed away, Nobi Daichi found something wrong. But he thought Mocha had discovered something else, so he quickly stood up and backed away. You know, they were all wearing invisible cloaks at this time. How could Mocha find them? But what Nobi Daichi didn't know was that Nobita accidentally left one foot outside, and luckily Mocha saw it. The invisible cloak can indeed hide the body, but that is within the range covered by the invisible cloak. Once you leave the range covered by the invisible cloak, you will show your true form. But immediately Nobi Daichi felt something was wrong. The moment he heard the gunshot, Nobi Daichi instinctively came to the front of Nobita. At the same time, a golden light flashed on Nobi Daichi's body. Not knowing whether his body could resist the bullets, Nobi Daichi decisively chose to transform into Emperor Man. As a result, Nobi Daichi's figure revealed an invisible cloak and appeared in front of Mocha and others. Clang! The bullet shot by Mocha directly hit Nobi Daichi, who had already transformed into Emperor Man. Mocha was indeed very close to Nobi Daichi and his group. The power of the gun was indeed not small, but the bullet shot by Mocha was like a tickle on Nobi Daichi's body, and it was insignificant. Chapter 218 Escape. Who are you? Seeing Nobi Daichi reveal his true form, Mocha pointed his gun at Nobi Daichi and said sternly. He had seen the scene just now, and the gun in his hand could not break Nobi Daichi's defense at all. The soldiers standing at the door with live ammunition also raised their rifles and pointed them at Nobi Daichi. What's going on? Nobita and Doraemon were at a loss for a moment when they saw this sudden scene. Nobita, your foot is exposed. Nobita Daichi looked carefully at the situation around him and said to Nobita without turning his head. Ah, my foot is exposed. Nobita lowered his head and looked at his feet with a puzzled look on his face and found that one of his feet was indeed exposed. Then Nobita quickly stretched the exposed foot back. Mocha had been watching the situation on Nobita's side, and after hearing what Nobita said, he was confused. Who is Nobita? Then Mocha found that the shoe he was looking at was gone. After thinking about what Nobi Daichi said just now, Mocha immediately guessed that there were at least 2 people on Nobi Daichi's side. At this time, he realized that his intuition was not wrong. It's just that these guys in front of him are too weird, and they can't be detected by electronic detection equipment. Nobita, you go first, I'll cover the rear. You. Hearing this, Mocha was stunned. Now he estimated that there are at least 3 people on Nobi Daichi's side. Hearing Nobi Daichi's words, Nobita and Doraemon didn't hesitate much and ran directly towards the direction of the gate, intending to escape from here. They knew that staying here would only cause trouble for Nobi Daichi. But how could Mocha let Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon and their group do what they wanted? Mocha shouted after hearing Nobi Daichi say you go first. Shoot. Although he didn't know what the purpose of Nobi Daichi and his group secretly coming here was. But it's better to kill by mistake than to let them go. Who knows what Nobi Daichi and the others have learned from here. If they leak what they know, it will be like an 18 magnitude earthquake for him. After hearing Mocha's order, the soldiers who pointed their guns at Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon opened fire without hesitation. Damn it. Nobi Daichi cursed secretly. Then he rushed to Nobita and Doraemon to block the bullets. Clang, clang. Bullets shot at Nobi Daichi, but they slid directly to the ground after hitting Nobi Daichi. Looking at this scene, Mocha's pupils shrank. But he was not too surprised. After all, he had seen it once before. And his reinforcement will arrive soon. Now his goal is to stop Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon from leaving. Although Nobi Daichi was wearing an unknown armor that could resist bullets, it brought Mocha a stronger impact. But Mocha would not stay there stupidly. When the soldiers were shooting, he fired his gun at the same time. Earth wall. Nobi Daichi roared in his heart. He pressed his right hand to the ground and mobilized the earth power of the 5 element in his body. Then, in the surprised eyes of everyone present, a 3 meter high, 1 meter wide, and more than 10 meter long earth wall suddenly rose from the ground and blocked Nobi Daichi, Nobita, and Doraemon. The bullets shot at Nobi Daichi and others naturally hit the earth wall. Without hesitation, Nobi Daichi first picked up his invisible cloak that fell on the ground, and then picked up Nobita and Doraemon and ran outside. The invisible cloak can only hide the body in front of technology, but Nobi Daichi does not rely on technology. Therefore, he can directly sense where Nobita and Doraemon are. This is why Mocha always felt that someone was spying on him by intuition before. The iron wall protecting the forest also caused a small part of it to collapse in front of the earth wall that Nobi Daichi had just used. Nobi Daichi's speed at this time was very fast, and he rushed 100 meters in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared in front of Mocha and others. Looking at the earth wall standing in front of him and the collapsed iron fence, Mocha couldn't help but frown. They actually let them escape. Mocha couldn't help but clench his fist, but immediately loosened his fist. You hire someone to deal with this earth wall and the collapsed iron fence, Mocha said to a soldier standing next to him. Yes, sir. The soldier took the order and went to execute it. Mocha was of course very curious about the sudden appearance of the earth wall and Nobi Daichi who could use such a strange magic. The soldiers present were also very curious. However, they all strictly abided by the military discipline and said nothing. But compared to another matter, the matter of Nobi Daichi and his group can be put aside for the time being. At this time, Mocha's rescue had arrived, but Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon had already left. So there was no point in rescuing them. Then Mocha stopped going up the mountain and turned to the gate, whispering in his heart. It seems that the plan has to be advanced. Nobi Daichi carried Nobita in one hand and Doraemon in the other and soon came to a sparsely populated and remote dilapidated house. This dilapidated house was thousands of meters away from the prosperous city. After arriving at this place, Nobi Daichi put Nobita and Doraemon down. Nobita and Doraemon just felt that they were being lifted up without any resistance. Then they closed their eyes in fear, and at the same time, they heard the sound of whoosh wind in their ears. When they opened their eyes again, they found that they had come to a dilapidated house. In front of them stood Nobi Daichi wearing the Emperor's armor. After finding themselves far away from the dangerous place, Nobita and Doraemon took off their invisibility cloaks at the same time. After Nobita took off his invisibility cloak, he sat on the ground to rest. What happened just now really scared him. His heart was still beating bang bang bang. Now that he finally got a little time to breathe, how could he not take a rest? Doraemon was also scared by what happened just now. Are you okay? Nobi Daichi asked Nobita and Doraemon. What happened just now really happened too suddenly, although he always took protecting Nobita and Doraemon as his top priority, and he tried his best to stop those people from shooting their bullets at Nobita and Doraemon. But it's better to be safe than sorry. Nobi Daichi was always afraid that he would miss something. Just seeing that Nobita and Doraemon didn't scream, he thought they should be fine. But for peace of mind, he decided to ask Nobita and Doraemon. We are fine. Nobita and Doraemon replied in unison. That's good. Chapter 219 Entering the City. Hearing what Nobita and Doraemon said, Nobi Daichi couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At the same time, he also lifted his Emperor Man transformation state. Looking at Nobita and Doraemon who were still in shock, Nobita Daichi said, what should we do next? Why don't we take a break and then sneak back? Hearing what Nobita Daichi said, Nobita's eyes lit up, and he expressed his opinion. However, Nobita Daichi had some different ideas. Why don't we go to a certain city to take a look? Otherwise, wouldn't our trip be in vain this time? Doraemon, what do you think? I also agree with what Nobita Daichi said. It's not easy to come here, and I always feel a little regretful to go back like this. Regarding the different opinions of Nobita and Nobita Daichi, Doraemon stood on Nobita Daichi's side. Okay then. Nobita saw that Doraemon agreed with Nobita Daichi's opinion, and knew that the overall situation was settled. Although he was reluctant in his heart, he had no better way. Then Nobita Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon sat on the ground, and rested for a while. 10 minutes later, Nobi Daichi stood up first. Looking at Nobita and Doraemon who were sitting on the ground, Nobi Daichi said, "How is it? Have you rested well?" "Well, we will set off." "Well rested." Nobita and Doraemon replied one after another. "Well, let's set off now." Nobi Daichi said to Nobita and Doraemon eagerly. As for that city, Nobi Daichi couldn't wait to know the situation inside. And after Nobita could not resist, and could only accept it, he also became very curious about that city. "Then do we still need to wear the invisible cloak?" Doraemon pointed at the invisible cloak and said. "This." Nobi Daichi said, after thinking for a moment. "Let's put it on, and go to that city, to see the situation inside. If the situation is good, it won't be too late to take it off." Nobita and Doraemon both felt that what Nobi Daichi said made sense, so they didn't object. So the matter was decided. Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon all put on their own invisible cloaks. After Nobita held Doraemon's hand, he came over and tried to hold Nobita Daichi's hand, but was rejected by Nobita Daichi. "I can sense your position. You two can hold each other's hands and I will follow behind you," Nobita Daichi explained to Nobita and Doraemon. He had no choice before, but the situation is different now. He doesn't want to hold Nobita and Doraemon's hands anymore. It's too awkward. Hearing Nobita Daichi's words, Nobita and Doraemon were full of questions. "Daichi, can you sense our position when we are wearing the invisible cloak?" Doraemon said to Nobita Daichi in disbelief. "Yes. Otherwise, how could I lead you out when you were wearing the invisible cloak just now?" Hearing Doraemon's obvious doubts, Nobita Daichi affirmed. "Okay then." Although Nobita and Doraemon both wanted to ask why Nobita Daichi could sense them wearing the invisible cloak, but Doraemon knew that even if he asked, Nobi Daichi would not tell him. Even if Nobi Daichi told him, it would be ambiguous or inexplicable, so he did not plan to ask. As for Nobita, now he was just curious about the city, and he did not care much about the strange things that happened to Nobi Daichi. Then Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon walked towards the city. They were wearing invisible cloaks, and could not wear bamboo dragonflies. It didn't take long. Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon were not far from the city. They were now next to a big road, with endless traffic and people on the road. As Nobi Daichi expected, the technology level of this city was indeed very advanced. Or it should be said, that the technology level of this world was very advanced. Because where they were, was the exit of the city. Many vehicles were coming out of the city, and heading towards the distance of this road. Why did Nobi Daichi judge that the technology level of this world was very advanced? Because the cars that appeared in front of Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon were all floating on the ground, several centimeters away from the ground. It was far beyond the so-called magnetic levitation technology that Nobi Daichi had heard of in his previous life. After all, the so-called magnetic levitation technology seemed to require a magnet underneath. Nobi Daichi was not too familiar with this, and had only heard of the term magnetic levitation. But there were always many restrictions. However, the various vehicles that appeared in front of Nobi Daichi now did not have so many restrictions. It seems that the driving of vehicles in this world should not consume oil resources, and there should be very little pollution. And from the sky of this world, Nobi Daichi can also find that there should be very little environmental pollution in this world. Because the sky of this world is really too blue, much bluer than the sky on Earth now. It is more like a sky that has not been polluted. Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon did not walk directly into the city. Before entering the city, they had to do one thing. That is to eat translation konjac. After all, they are not from this world and cannot understand what people in this world say. This will make some things inconvenient to do. Besides, Nobita and Nobi Daichi were very curious about the situation in this world and wanted to know. Then, without anyone noticing, Doraemon took out 2 pieces of translation konjac from his 4-dimensional pocket and handed them to Nobita and Nobi Daichi respectively. After eating the translation konjac, Nobi Daichi and Nobita walked towards the city in a swagger. Nobi Daichi didn't believe that there were detection instruments everywhere in this city that could see their situation, so there were not so many constraints. The 3 invisible people walked in this prosperous city. Nobita and Doraemon walked hand in hand, and Nobi Daichi walked alone. Because Nobita and Doraemon couldn't see Nobi Daichi had to follow behind Nobita and Doraemon. Nobita Daichi looked at the direction where Nobita and Doraemon were walking. It seemed that there was a zoo in this city not far away. He was also very curious about the zoo in this city. He didn't know whether it was something he had seen or not. The dark cave in this world, the animals and plants in the sea outside the cave. Although there are many that Nobi Daichi does not recognize. After all, he has not done much research on marine life. But there are always some that Nobi Daichi knows. But you have to know that this is a strange world, a strange city. But Nobi Daichi did not hold too much hope. Because from the current situation, the clothes of the pedestrians walking around them are the same as those in the Doraemon world. Although there are some differences, they are not too big. A glimpse of the whole picture, so Nobi Daichi did not hold too much hope for the zoo here. Chapter 220 Wall Circle. Nobita and Doraemon walked quietly in front, followed by Nobita Daichi. The 3 of them shuttled through the crowd and soon arrived at a zoo not far from them. The gate of the zoo was a large iron gate nearly 10 meters long, and next to the gate was a small bungalow. At this time, the gate of the zoo was opening, and large trucks entered one after another. Next to the large iron gate were 2 entrances and exits more than 2 meters long, and many tourists were entering and leaving at this time. At the entrance and exit, 2 uniformed personnel were checking tickets. The tickets here were not made of paper, but an electronic ticket similar to the 21st century in Nobita Daichi's memory of his previous life. The 2 ticket inspectors at the entrance and exit held a detection instrument in their hands, and the tourists held very thin smartphones in their hands. After the ticket inspector scanned the tourists' smartphones with the electronic instrument in his hand, the electronic instrument flashed a green light to prove that it was a real ticket and they could enter the zoo. Nobita, Doraemon and Nobita Daichi stood next to the queue of people, watching the people enter the zoo one by one. But they had no way to get through the crowd. Although they could avoid the electronic inspection of the ticket inspector by wearing invisible cloaks, the people in the queue were too close to each other, and they could not get in at all. No choice, Nobita and Doraemon could only leave here and think of other ways. Soon, Nobita and Doraemon came to a small alley with Nobita and Doraemon. The wall on the left side of this alley was one of the 4 walls of the zoo. Nobita and Doraemon did not take off their invisible cloaks this time, but just talked. "How should we get in?" Nobita whispered. Although there were almost no people in the alley where Nobita and Doraemon were. But occasionally there were still 1 or 2 people walking through the alley, and Nobita and the others could not help but be careful. "I remember, Doraemon, you seem to have a wall loop, right?" "Huh? Yes, but how did you know, Daichi?" Doraemon asked in a puzzled tone. "Haha, don't worry about it, I just know it anyway." Nobi Daichi laughed. This was not a brainless move by Nobi Daichi, but something Nobi Daichi did on purpose. You know, they will have to go through so many drama plots later, and Nobi Daichi will definitely make various suggestions in the process. Some of them may be understandable to Nobita, Doraemon and others, and some may be incomprehensible to Nobita, Doraemon and others. But no matter what, if they have to ask Nobita Daichi every question they can't understand, not only will it waste time, it may worsen the incident, and it will be very troublesome. So Nobi Daichi decided to give Nobita and Doraemon more preventive shots in normal times, to subtly change their thinking. Seeing that Nobita Daichi didn't want to explain, Doraemon didn't ask any more questions, and directly took out a golden circle from his 4-dimensional pocket. Wall penetrating circle. It looks like a golden ring. The user can pass through the wall by sticking it on the wall. Put the circle on the wall, and a hole will appear and lead to the other side of the wall. Since the hole is the fourth dimension, no matter what is on the wall, it will not be affected. Of course, if the wall is specially made, there is an exception. However, if it is placed on the ground, it will not pass through the center of the earth, but will become a trap with a bottom. After taking out the wall penetrating ring, Doraemon explained the function and precautions of the wall penetrating ring to Nobita and Nobi Daichi. In Doraemon's opinion, he mainly explained it to Nobita, but it was not the case. Although Nobi Daichi had a certain understanding of the wall penetrating ring, it was limited to the function of the wall penetrating ring. As for the precautions of the wall penetrating ring mentioned by Doraemon, Nobi Daichi had almost never heard of it. Therefore, when Doraemon explained the precautions of the wall penetrating ring, Nobi Daichi listened very carefully. After explaining the function and precautions of the wall penetrating ring to Nobita and Nobi Daichi, Doraemon pasted the wall penetrating ring on the wall of the zoo on the left side of the alley. A golden circle appeared on the wall, and in the middle of the circle was a dark hole, enough for a person to enter. Nobita and Nobi Daichi also saw the wall penetrating ring that Doraemon had pasted on the wall. Because Nobita and Doraemon were standing close together, Nobi Daichi was behind them. Therefore, Nobita and Doraemon were the first to enter the zoo through the wall penetrating ring. After Nobita and Doraemon entered the zoo, Nobi Daichi also followed in. After Nobi Daichi entered the zoo through the wall penetrating ring, what came into view was not the endless stream of people, but a mighty tiger. They actually passed through the wall penetrating ring and directly entered a fence, where a tiger was imprisoned. There was no one outside the fence, where the tiger was imprisoned at this time, and no one knew why. Seeing this, Nobi Daichi couldn't help but be quite disappointed. He didn't expect that the animals in the zoo in this world in this city were actually similar to the animals in his own world. The place where Nobi Daichi and his friends came in was a corner of the zoo. The reason why they were arranged in this corner was that they were afraid that someone would notice something unusual. But now it seems that everything is normal, except for Nobita and Doraemon, who were scared silly by the tiger. Although Nobita and Doraemon knew that they were wearing invisible cloaks, the tiger in front of them could not see them or hear their footsteps. But Nobita and Doraemon still couldn't help being afraid. After all, it is the nature of the weak to be afraid of the strong. Even if you think you are not afraid, you must have the emotion of fear in your subconscious mind when facing the strong. It's just that you suppressed it, not to mention that Nobita and Doraemon are still two children. Roar. As if it had noticed something, the tiger who was resting next to the fence suddenly stood up and walked towards Nobita, Doraemon and Nobi Daichi. Doraemon, brother, you go out through the wall first. Nobi Daichi's voice suddenly appeared in the ears of Nobita and Doraemon, and also in the ears of the tiger in front of the three. Nobita and Doraemon walked directly towards the wall without hesitation. They had seen Nobi Daichi's strength many times, and they were not worried that Nobi Daichi would be defeated by an ordinary tiger and get hurt. But they themselves may not be so sure. Roar. Hearing Nobi Daichi's words, although the tiger couldn't see Nobi Daichi and didn't understand what Nobi Daichi said, it could clearly know that its dignity was offended by a human. Then the tiger, which had already walked a few steps towards Nobi Daichi, stood up next to the fence and ran towards Nobi Daichi directly with its hunting instinct. This tiger had just entered the zoo and had not been domesticated yet and still retained the ferocity of being the overlord of the forest. Chapter 221 Peaked Cap. After the tiger rushed to Nobi Daichi a few meters in front of him, it directly kicked its hind legs and jumped up to pounce on Nobi Daichi. Nobi Daichi didn't even look at the tiger's hunting method that never failed. When the tiger was about to pounce on him, he raised his right hand and slapped it. Pa. The tiger, weighing hundreds of pounds, was directly slapped by Nobi Daichi to the wall on the other side and then slid down the wall. At this time, Nobi Daichi looked at the tiger that was slapped away by his slap. At this time, the fierce tiger slid down the wall and did not move. Of course, through Nobi Daichi's perception, the tiger was not dead, but was fainted by his slap, and it would be fine after a sleep. Then Nobi Daichi turned around and walked out through the wall circle. After Nobi Daichi came out, he looked around the alley and saw that there was no one around before he said to Nobita and Doraemon, "I'm out, I'm fine." Nobita and Doraemon couldn't sense Nobita Daichi. Therefore, Nobita Daichi could only tell Nobita and Doraemon by talking that he was out and fine. Nobita and Doraemon, who were anxiously waiting for Nobita Daichi outside, were relieved after hearing Nobita Daichi's words. Then do we still need to go in? Nobita asked a key question at this time. What happened just now left a big shadow on Nobita. As soon as he entered, he saw the tiger, but when he entered, the tiger was still sleeping. After Doraemon also entered, the sleeping tiger woke up, as if it had sensed something. Nobita, who was stared at by the tiger, almost dared not move. In fact, it was not that he didn't want to move, but that he was so scared by the tiger that his legs were weak, that he couldn't move at all. In this situation, Nobita felt a little relieved after Nobita Daichi came in and knew how powerful Nobita Daichi was. After experiencing such a stimulating thing, Nobita no longer had too many fantasies about the zoo. It was he who brought Nobi Daichi and Doraemon here. If he didn't ask Nobi Daichi and Doraemon for their opinions and just said he didn't want to go, Nobita would always feel a little embarrassed. Of course I have to go. How can I not go? Although the animals here are almost the same as those on Earth. But you have to know that we are wearing invisible cloaks and we can interact with some cute animals. After hearing what Nobita said, Nobita Daichi expressed his opinion without hesitation. Of course, what he said was not what he really thought. What he really wanted to do was to see other animals in the zoo. They just saw the tiger. What if this was just an exception? There are other animals he doesn't know, and he didn't go in to see them. Wouldn't that be a big loss? And through those animals, Nobita Daichi can also learn more about the world. I agree with what Daichi said. Doraemon seemed to be very curious about being able to interact with cute animals. Therefore, he agreed with Nobita Daichi's opinion. Okay then. Nobita gave in again. If it was only Nobi Daichi who was going to the zoo, he would definitely refute Nobi Daichi without saying anything and say he would not go. But Doraemon also agreed, so he had to go, even if he didn't want to. If he resolutely refused to go, then the next scene would probably be Nobi Daichi and Doraemon happily entering the zoo. He was left alone here, which was more terrifying than entering the zoo. Who knew what would happen to him outside? It would be safer to follow Nobi Daichi and Doraemon into the zoo. It would be safer to follow Nobi Daichi and Doraemon than to be alone, right? With this idea in mind, Nobita was not so resistant to entering the zoo again. Doraemon, I will use the wall penetrating ring this time. Just now when I entered the zoo, I observed the surrounding environment and knew where it would be more convenient. Feeling Doraemon walking towards the wall, Nobi Daichi said hurriedly. Of course he knew what Doraemon was going to do, which was nothing more than taking down the wall penetrating ring and sticking it on in another place. But Doraemon didn't know the situation in the zoo. What if he put the penetrating ring in the fence of a wild animal? Or put it in some other special places? That would be a beautiful picture. The result of the beautiful picture is that they can only flee in panic again. Don't get me wrong, these special places refer to the walls equipped with various electronic devices. This is what Nobi Daichi doesn't want to see, and they can't stay in this place for too long. Therefore, we can't waste time and cherish every minute and second in this world. Oh, then Daichi, come on. After hearing Nobi Daichi's words, Doraemon also stretched out his hand that was about to touch the penetrating ring and walked to the side. After Doraemon walked away from the penetrating ring, Nobi Daichi took Doraemon's place and hurried to the penetrating ring and took the penetrating ring off the wall. Then Nobi Daichi changed his position and put the penetrating ring on the wall again. From the perspective of Nobita and Doraemon, a golden circle floated in the air and finally floated onto the wall. This time, Nobita Daichi got in first through the wall penetrating ring. After Nobita Daichi got in, Nobita and Doraemon followed closely. Soon, Nobita Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon entered the zoo again. Then Doraemon, who entered last, turned around and tried to take the wall penetrating ring off the wall. The alley outside. A young man wearing a baseball cap was walking hurriedly from the entrance of the alley into the alley. He was going to go through this alley to another street. But after walking a dozen steps quickly, the young man in the baseball cap suddenly stopped and then instinctively looked at the wall on the left for some reason. It seemed that something there was attracting him. Hey, I don't remember there was a hole here. looking at the dark hole on the wall that was big enough for a person to drill through, which appeared silently at some point. The young man in the baseball cap thought to himself. But then the young man in the baseball cap became nervous. No, I have to go back and report to the director. Then the young man in the baseball cap went to the hole. Of course, he had to report to the director of the zoo. But the most important task at the moment was to check where the hole led to, whether there was anyone there, and whether anything was lost. And someone had to be assigned to guard the hole, to prevent more things from being lost. In the absence of anyone guarding it, let him, the newcomer who just entered the zoo, guard it. In these few short moments, many thoughts flashed through the young man in the baseball cap's mind. Thinking about these things, the young man in the baseball cap did not stop his body movements. When many thoughts appeared in his mind, he had already stuck his head into the zoo. Doraemon, who was about to take the wall-penetrating ring off the wall, was stunned by this sudden scene. Chapter 222 Panic. But in the few seconds that Doraemon was stunned, the young man in the baseball cap had already drilled through the wall ring. Hey, this hole leads to here. Looking at the surrounding environment, the young man in the baseball cap muttered. But immediately the young man in the baseball cap patted his chest, as if he had thought of something. Fortunately, it doesn't lead directly to the circle of beasts. Looking at the young man in the baseball cap who realized it later, Nobi Daichi, who had already turned around, couldn't help but twitch his mouth. When Nobi Daichi didn't notice it, the deep blue on his left little finger flashed a ray of light. It didn't seem conspicuous at all in the environment at that time. Seeing the young man in the baseball cap coming in, Doraemon also stopped and didn't take off the wall ring. Even if he wanted to take off the wall ring, he couldn't take it off at this time. Otherwise, it would alert the enemy. After the young man in the baseball cap came in, he stayed in place for a few seconds and walked towards the direction of Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon. Seeing the young man in the peaked cap coming over, Doraemon quickly stepped aside to make way for him. Nobi Daichi and Nobita also consciously made way for the young man in the peaked cap. The passage where Nobi Daichi and others were located was located in the middle of two animal enclosures. This passage can accommodate two people walking side by side at the same time, but more than that is not possible. The room that Nobi Daichi and others came to was not big or small. There were 4 wild animals in total. In addition to the tiger that was knocked unconscious by Nobi Daichi and was still sleeping, there was also a peacock, a bear and an antelope. These 4 imprisoned wild animals were located in the 4 corners of the room. These 4 wild animals occupied most of the area of the room. Only a cross-shaped aisle was left for people to walk. Looking at the confusion, shock, and disappointment in the eyes of the young man in the peaked cap, Nobi Daichi really didn't know how the young man in the peaked cap had so many changes in his heart in just a dozen seconds. The young man in the peaked cap looked at the 4 expensive wild animals imprisoned in this room and felt puzzled. Then he couldn't help thinking of the news he had seen recently, plus the things in front of him. All kinds of thoughts came to his mind. No, the director won't do this. The young man in the peaked cap couldn't help but feel very angry and at the same time a little panicked and at a loss. Then the young man in the peaked cap stopped walking inside but turned around and wanted to go out through the wall ring. He knew that ordinary people could never get into such a place. Therefore, even if he saw a door in this room, he knew that he could never open that door. If he wanted to go out, he could only go through the hole he came in through. As for the origin of this hole, at this time, the young man in the peaked cap, who was confused in his thinking, had long been in no mood to pay attention to these. As for the various weird behaviors of the young man in the peaked cap, Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon all stood aside without any action. Seeing the young man in the peaked cap turn around and plan to leave here, Doraemon couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Finally leaving, then he can get the wall ring back. He could have taken the wall penetrating ring without being noticed, but that would have caused a series of problems. It would have been much better if the young man in the peaked cap disappeared from their sight. Seeing that the young man in the peaked cap had already drilled out of the wall penetrating ring, Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon had not had time to relax. The ground began to tremble, and the room where Nobi Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon were also trembling. The sharp-eyed Nobi Daichi had already seen the cracks appearing on the wall. These cracks continued to spread around after they appeared, and soon they would cover a whole wall. Looking at this scene, Nobi Daichi said secretly, "Not good." When the wall was full of cracks, Nobi Daichi believed that this wall would definitely collapse. With the collapse of a wall, this room would definitely collapse as well. The collapse of the house was naturally nothing to him, but it was different for Nobita and Doraemon. "Hurry up, this house is going to collapse," Nobi Daichi yelled to Nobita and Doraemon. In fact, there was no need for Nobita Daichi to shout. When the emergency occurred, Nobita and Doraemon headed towards the wall circle to leave. However, the sudden changes around them happened too quickly, and even though Nobita and Doraemon ran towards the wall circle at the first time, Nobita Daichi felt that it was still a bit slow. That's why he shouted at Nobita and Doraemon. But even if he shouted, it seemed too late, because the cracks on the wall spread slowly at the beginning, and the speed of spread was much more terrifying later. And the distance between Nobita and Doraemon and the wall circle. Doraemon was closer, only about 2 or 3 meters. Nobita was farther away, about 7 or 8 meters. It was not easy to walk this distance at ordinary times. But at this time, the ground was shaking too violently, and they were swaying left and right when they walked, and it was too easy to fall. Doraemon had already passed through the wall circle and Nobita still had 1 or 2 meters. Nobi Daichi knew that this was not going to work, so he quickly rushed to Nobita and grabbed him. Then he stuffed Nobita into the wall-penetrating circle. The next second, the whole house collapsed. After the young man in the peaked cap came out, he planned to find the director to ask about the situation here. Until the last moment, he still didn't believe that the director would do such a thing. But when he wanted to walk out of the alley, the ground suddenly trembled, and he fell down without any defense. Hiss. Because of a sharp stone on the ground, the young man in the peaked cap had a wound several centimeters long on his left arm. This made the young man in the peaked cap instinctively take a breath. It hurts. But the young man in the peaked cap didn't have time to take care of these, and the current situation seemed to be very bad. There were cracks on the 2 surrounding walls, and it looked like they were about to collapse. Therefore, the young man in the peaked cap could only endure the pain in his left arm, get up from the ground, and run out of the alley. It seemed that his instinct broke out under the life crisis, and the speed of the young man in the peaked cap was even faster than before he was injured. He successfully ran out of this dangerous alley 1 second before the 2 walls collapsed. After Doraemon climbed out through the wall circle, he did not leave here immediately, but quickly took out 3 bamboo dragonflies from his 4-dimensional pocket. He put one of the 3 bamboo dragonflies on his head. At this time, Doraemon no longer cared whether he would be exposed. A few seconds after Doraemon came out, Nobita also drilled out immediately. However, the condition did not seem to be very good. When he came out, he actually fell to the ground. Doraemon hurriedly walked forward and put a bamboo dragonfly on the confused Nobita without saying anything. Because Nobita had already emerged from the invisible cloak at this time, Doraemon could see Nobita. Chapter 223 Bear. Just when Doraemon put the bamboo helicopter on Nobita and looked at the place where the wall-penetrating circle was, when he thought that Daisy would come out soon, the wall where the wall-penetrating circle was suddenly collapsed. Doraemon couldn't help but stand there in shock. The next moment, Doraemon was filled with grief. Daisy may have. Doraemon was shocked by this sudden scene and was at a loss. He had forgotten that Nobita and Daisy were different from them. Because the wall where the wall-penetrating circle was located collapsed inward, Doraemon and Nobita were not crushed by the wall. However, looking at the wall behind him that was about to collapse, Doraemon quickly helped Nobita fly into the air. However, because Doraemon was carrying Nobita, he did not fly very high. Nobita, who was carried into the air by Doraemon, quickly woke up from his panic just now. Then Nobita pressed down the bamboo helicopter on his head. Seeing that Nobita had recovered and could fly in the air by himself, Doraemon also let go of Nobita's hand. Nobita was very worried when he saw the collapse. He remembered that he seemed to be too late to get out. But a sudden burst of strength from behind him allowed him to get out at the last moment. Nobita knew that it was Nobita Daichi who pushed him out. Although Nobita was very worried about Nobita Daichi's safety, he couldn't help but feel less worried when he thought of the strange things that happened to Nobita Daichi. Who is scolding me? In a dark and narrow space, a golden figure was laying. The golden figure first pulled his arm out from under the big rock next to him. Then he wiped his nose. Then he pushed his right arm up hard. A huge rock that was pressing on his right arm was pushed away by the golden figure, and the light shone in again. Then Nobita Daichi stood up and patted the non-existent dust on his body. Looking at the several meter long big rock that he pushed away, Nobita Daichi couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. When facing that situation just now, Nobita Daichi chose to transform at the first time. Transformation is not only to avoid disasters, but also to prevent his clothes from getting dirty. Nobi Daichi is not a physical cultivator, and now he seems to be unable to release body protecting ki or anything like that. Therefore, he estimated that, if he really used his body to resist the collapsed wall, it would feel very painful. So as a human instinct when facing this kind of disaster, Nobi Daichi actually chose to lie down to avoid the disaster. But you have to know that, even if the wall hits him directly, he will not be hurt at all after transforming into Emperor Man. But anyway, it's good to be fine, and Nobi Daichi didn't dwell on it too much. Looking at the tall golden figure coming out of the rocks, Nobita and Doraemon both smiled happily. Then Nobita and Doraemon flew towards Nobita Daichi at the same time. After landing next to Nobita Daichi, Nobita and Doraemon asked with concern, "Daichi, are you okay?" "Nothing," Nobita Daichi replied. "Let's leave here quickly and find a safe place." "Yes." Nobita and Doraemon both nodded in agreement. Kicking away a huge stone slab, Nobita Daichi bent down and took the wall-penetrating ring from the wall. After handing the wall-penetrating ring to Doraemon, Doraemon put the wall-penetrating ring back into the four-dimensional pocket. As for Nobita Daichi's own invisible cloak, he also pulled it out from under a stone. However, from the appearance, the invisible cloak worn by Nobita Daichi was seriously damaged. Not only did it have several big holes, but it was also divided into several pieces of cloth fluttering in the wind. It was also covered with dust, almost no different from a tattered piece of clothing. The horrible invisible cloak was also handed to Doraemon by Nobita Daichi. Doraemon looked at the severely damaged clothes and felt very sorry. A good invisible cloak turned out like this? It is estimated that it can't be used. As for repairing it, it is better to buy a new one. Anyway, there is so much money, and it is not his to spend. These thoughts all appeared in Doraemon's mind. In reality, the moment Nobi Daichi handed the invisibility cloak to Doraemon, Doraemon just glanced at the severely damaged invisibility cloak and put it back into the four-dimensional pocket. This kind of thing cannot be left here. Nobi Daichi looked at the bamboo dragonfly in Doraemon's hand. He originally wanted to remove the Emperor Man transformation and put on the bamboo dragonfly to leave here. But Nobi Daichi saw a person who stumbled and supported his left arm with his right hand from the corner of his eye. It was the young man in the peaked cap. The sharp-eyed Nobi Daichi naturally saw the young man in the peaked cap and the injury on his left arm. He looked at this scene and knew that if he didn't save the young man in the peaked cap, he might. So Nobi Daichi said to Nobita and Doraemon urgently, "You fly in the air and follow me." "Then what are you going to do?" "To save someone." After saying this, Nobi Daichi no longer hesitated and ran directly to the young man in the peaked cap. He was so fast that he rushed to the side of the young man in the peaked cap in almost the blink of an eye. Then, in the surprised eyes of the young man in the peaked cap, Nobi Daichi picked up the young man in the peaked cap with one hand and clamped him horizontally at the waist. "Hey, who are you? What are you going to do? Put me down." This is what Nobi Daichi imagined, but the reality is different from this. The young man in the peaked cap was clamped at the waist by Nobi Daichi before he could react. The young man in the peaked cap struggled a few times, but after looking up and seeing the appearance of Nobi Daichi who transformed into Emperor Man, he fell into deep shock and stopped struggling. Is the legend true? The young man in the peaked cap muttered to himself. Nobi Daichi naturally heard what the young man in the peaked cap said. Legend? What legend? Several questions popped up in Nobi Daichi's mind one after another, but this was obviously not the time to think about them. At this time, Nobita and Doraemon had not yet flown over, and Nobi Daichi had time to observe the surrounding situation. There was almost no one around Nobi Daichi except the young man in the baseball cap, which was a strange thing. However, with his strong hearing, Nobi Daichi could hear the noisy noise coming from not far away. Then when he turned around and looked in one direction, Nobi Daichi couldn't help but be startled. Did it appear again? Looking at the tall figure in the distance, Nobi Daichi muttered to himself. But Nobi Daichi was not very scared. The young man in the baseball cap looked in the direction that Nobi Daichi was looking at and also saw the creature that was dozens of meters high. The creature looked very much like a bear that was magnified dozens of times. However, except for the general shape of the bear, which could be seen as a bear, other aspects were far beyond the scope of a bear. Looking at this extremely shocking scene, the young man in the baseball cap said that he was not afraid, which was a lie. But looking at Nobi Daichi holding him, the baseball cap felt relieved. With him here, there should be nothing to worry about. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224, Overestimating One's Capacity. That bear monster. Let's call it a bear monster for now. Although it is dozens of meters high, but in this city full of tall buildings, it does not seem particularly noticeable. Moreover, there are many 100-meter high buildings or skyscrapers that are taller than the bear monster. What makes the bear monster noticeable is that the bear monster is destroying the city wantonly and recklessly at this time. Because there are no tall buildings in front of Nobi Daichi, Nobi Daichi can see the situation of the bear monster at this time. I saw that the bear monster can destroy most of a building with a casual slap, causing the floors to collapse and the building to be shaky. Seeing this situation, Nobi Daichi is sure that in this short period of time, many people must have died. At the same time, more and more people appeared in the remote corners of the city where Nobi Daichi was. They were all people who saw the bear monster and ran away. These people were old and young, male and female, but no one looked at Nobi Daichi during the escape. They all hurriedly passed by Nobi Daichi. Even if someone was surprised by Nobi Daichi's dress in such a dangerous situation, they only flashed a flash of surprise without even pausing. Through the various situations that have happened so far, Nobi Daichi believes that the cause of the earth turbulence and the collapse of the room is not the bear monster. Because the bear monster is not close to them at this time, at least a few thousand meters away. Although the bear monster can reach this distance very quickly, but at such a long distance, the bear monster cannot cause the house where Nobi Daichi is located to collapse. And there is no attack by the bear monster here, and there is no earthquake at this time. Then there is only one possibility. That is, some changes have occurred underground in the zoo area that Nobi Daichi does not know. Nobi Daichi's guess is not wrong. There is indeed a problem under the zoo. However, the ultimate root of this matter is the bear monster. The bear monster destroyed the city wantonly, leading to a series of related reactions. Various underground facilities under the zoo, such as pipelines and other things, were detonated. The explosion caused the underground space of the zoo to collapse, and the unstable foundation caused the floors of the zoo to collapse. It's a pity for the animals in the zoo. Nobi Daichi didn't have time to see and interact with them. The floor collapsed. Although there must be animals that survived, they are probably missing limbs and in danger. Help. Does anyone know what's going on? The people running around Nobi Daichi kept shouting loudly, with horror on their faces. Nobita and Doraemon also came to Nobita Daichi's side at this time. Many people in the surrounding crowd were very curious about Nobita and Doraemon's ability to fly in the air. But it was just curiosity. But some people were different, and they couldn't help but reveal a greedy look in their eyes. If I have this thing, I will definitely be able to escape from here. Nobita and Doraemon landed after flying to Nobita Daichi's side. Daichi. Doraemon was about to say something when a burly man suddenly rushed over from the crowd on the right. The direction this burly man rushed to was exactly where Nobi Daichi, Nobita, Doraemon and others were. Nobi Daichi naturally saw the burly man running over at the first time, and also noticed the ill intentions in the burly man's eyes. The burly man rushed over very fast, although it was also because of the close distance. but it was more likely that the life crisis stimulated the burly man's instinct, and he rushed to the side of Nobita and Doraemon in less than 5 seconds. The next moment, the burly man stretched out his hand to Nobita's head, intending to take down the bamboo dragonfly on Nobita's head for himself. Nobita and Doraemon were both stunned by this sudden scene. Seeing that the burly man's hand was about to touch the bamboo dragonfly on Nobita's head and take it down, the hand that the burly man stretched out to Nobita's head was directly grabbed by Nobi Daichi. Then Nobi Daichi threw the burly man several meters away. Since the place where he was thrown was exactly where the crowd was fleeing, in a sense, it saved the burly man a few steps. Ouch! After being thrown to the ground by Nobi Daichi, the burly man felt like his whole body was falling apart, and he couldn't even stand up for a while, because there was no one where the burly man landed. Therefore, Nobi Daichi threw the burly man, and did not hit anyone to cause extra casualties. After this incident, some people who wanted to snatch Nobita and Doraemon's bamboo dragonfly never dared to do so again. The crowd that was frightened by this incident also consciously moved away from the place where Nobi Daichi and others were, so that the 3 or 4 meters around the place where Nobi Daichi was empty. Not everyone in the crowd who came later saw the scene of Nobi Daichi throwing people. However, although they didn't know why the people in front had to walk around Nobi Daichi and others, they still consciously followed the people in front to walk around Nobi Daichi and others. Dazzy, what should we do now? Doraemon asked Nobi Daichi, looking at the crowd around them and listening to the noisy voices around them. Nobita and Doraemon were both extremely scared. Let's save this person first, Nobi Daichi said to Nobita and Doraemon. The young man in the baseball cap heard this. He looked up in surprise at Nobi Daichi, whose face he didn't know and didn't understand why this person would save him. After all, after seeing the surrounding environment clearly, the young man in the baseball cap knew that the first priority for everyone now was to leave here. As for saving him, if it were in peacetime, there would probably be quite a few people, but in this dangerous environment, others can't take care of themselves. Who has time to save him? I guess there are no doctors in the hospital now. Thinking of this, the young man in the baseball cap couldn't help but wonder, how would Nobi Daichi save himself? Well, okay. Doraemon hesitated, but finally agreed with Nobi Daichi's approach. His inherent kindness did not allow him to see this situation and not save. But now we have to find a safe place. Nobi Daichi scanned the surrounding environment and said to Nobita and Doraemon, yeah. Then, in the surprised eyes of others, Nobi Daichi held the young man in the baseball cap and ran towards a place. Although the speed was not as fast as the fastest, it was still super fast compared to ordinary people. Nobita and Doraemon turned on the switch of the bamboo dragonfly and flew into the air to follow Nobi Daichi. Going to the hospital to let the doctor treat the young man in the baseball cap is not feasible, so they can only save him themselves. What Nobi Daichi was thinking at this time was to use Doraemon's prop doctor's medical box to treat the young man in the baseball cap. At this time, Nobi Daichi's speed was not very fast, because if it was too fast, Nobita and Doraemon might lose it, because although the bamboo dragonfly is flying, but compared to Nobi Daichi's current fastest speed, it is still not enough. Chapter 225 Struggle. However, when Nobi Daichi was about to get away from the crowd with the young man in the baseball cap, the young man in the baseball cap suddenly struggled at Nobi Daichi's waist. Nobi Daichi, who was running, felt the situation at his waist and couldn't help but frowned. The young man in the baseball cap was fine just now. Why did he suddenly struggle now? Although the struggle of the young man in the baseball cap did not bring any impact to Nobi Daichi, but Nobi Daichi still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. What he said just now, the young man in the baseball cap should have heard it and knew that he was here to save him. As for whether to believe it or not, who cares? Anyway, the young man in the baseball cap did not struggle just now. But why did he suddenly struggle at his waist now? What's going on? This sir, please, can you put me down first? The young man in the baseball cap looked very unhappy, not because of Nobi Daichi. It was because his arm was injured and bleeding a lot, which affected his health, so his face naturally looked unhappy. While the young man in the baseball cap was talking to Nobi Daichi, his eyes were looking in another direction. Looking in the direction the young man in the baseball cap was looking, Nobi Daichi found that a little girl about 5 or 6 years old fell to the ground not far away. It was estimated that she was separated from her family. No one who was running around helped her. However, there were not many people around the little girl, and no one stepped on the little girl. For a while, the little girl was fine. This was a blessing. However, the little girl didn't know what was going on. It might be because she sprained her ankle. She sat on the ground and didn't stand up to run away. Instead, she looked around, tears streaming down her face, at a loss. This also made Nobi Daichi know why the young man in the baseball cap asked him to put him down. It seems that the young man in the baseball cap was kind-hearted and wanted to save the little girl. Maybe the young man in the baseball cap thought about asking him to save the little girl. After all, he had already saved him. He seemed to be a good person, so there was nothing wrong with saving another little girl, right? But the young man in the baseball cap felt that doing so might make him unhappy. After all, he had no obligation to rescue others, and he was holding the young man in the baseball cap and trying to save him. So the young man in the baseball cap took the initiative to put him down, to save the little girl, instead of asking Nobi Daichi to save the little girl. Looking at the little girl lying on the ground, Nobi Daichi hesitated. Such things are everywhere in this situation. There are probably too many to count. If he wants to save every such person, how can he not save them all? But since it happened in front of him, he should save her if he can. Thinking of this, Nobi Daichi planned to save the little girl. Although he was holding the young man in the baseball cap now, but he was holding one person in each hand, which was effortless for him now. But Nobi Daichi suddenly stopped and looked at the young man in the baseball cap with some astonishment. The young man in the baseball cap struggled on his waist just now and said to put him down. At first, Nobi Daichi disagreed. After all, in the current situation, Nobi Daichi didn't want any unexpected situation to happen again. He really didn't expect it. You can encounter such a thing just by coming to a random place to play. So Nobi Daichi held the young man in the peaked cap. At that time, what he thought in his mind was to quickly cure the young man in the peaked cap with Doraemon's doctor's treatment box. Then they parted ways with the young man in the peaked cap and went their separate ways. Then he transformed into Ultraman Tigger and destroyed the monster that suddenly appeared. That's what he thought at that time. After the monster was destroyed, he would go home with Nobita and Doraemon. Not to mention that it was not early now. Nobi Daichi was naturally very curious about this unknown world, but he couldn't take Nobita and Doraemon on an adventure. He had to send them home first, and then come here alone to take a look. If it was in the movie version, Nobita and Doraemon would definitely be safe, but Nobi Daichi reacted immediately. His arrival has caused some unknown changes in the Doraemon world. Even in the TV series, Nobita will encounter danger, not to mention this world that has never been mentioned in the original work. But plans cannot keep up with changes. Looking at the little girl who fell to the ground, Nobi Daichi couldn't help but waver a little, and his hands unconsciously relaxed a little. At the same time, he was thinking in his mind whether to save the little girl or not, and at this moment, the young man in the peaked cap actually broke free from Nobi Daichi's restraints, endured the pain from his arm, and ran towards the little girl. Looking at this scene, Nobi Daichi was in a dilemma for a while. Standing there was a little, following the young man in the peaked cap, to save the little girl. At this moment, Nobi Daichi suddenly felt the ground go dark. Instinctively looking up at the sky, Nobi Daichi found that at least 3 or 4 fighter planes flew towards the bear monster. I should have nothing to do with me now, right? Nobi Daichi thought in his heart. Although the bear monster looked very much like the little monster in Ultraman fighting little monsters that he knew in his previous life in terms of size and some other aspects. But Nobi Daichi would not believe it. Was it such a coincidence that he actually encountered it? If it was just an ordinary animal, under the fully equipped fighter jet, it would probably not be able to jump a few times. And in Nobi Daichi's opinion, the technology in this world is so advanced, so the weapon should also be very advanced. Maybe Nobi Daichi's prediction was right. The people who were originally running around, after seeing 4 or 5 fighter jets in the sky flying towards the bear monster, they all stopped and showed hope on their faces. The young man in the peaked cap quickly rushed to the side of the little girl who fell to the ground, but his left arm was injured. He could only use one hand to hold him, and he couldn't pick up the little girl who fell to the ground. He squatted next to the little girl. The young man in the peaked cap was in a very embarrassing situation for a while. Seeing this, Nobi Daichi no longer hesitated and rushed to the side of the young man in the peaked cap and the little girl in the blink of an eye. At this time, Nobita and Doraemon also rushed over. Looking at the young man in the baseball cap squatting on the ground and the little girl lying on the ground, Nobi Daichi decided not to go to any so-called safe place. Instead of going to a safe place, he might as well cure the young man in the baseball cap and the little girl directly, which would only take a few minutes anyway. After curing the young man in the baseball cap and the little girl, their life and death would no longer be his business. He could only save people temporarily, not forever. In the following situation, even if the young man in the baseball cap and the little girl died accidentally, it would have nothing to do with him. As the saying goes, life and death are determined by fate, and wealth and honor are determined by God. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.